Captive Prince. First Generation. Age of Chaos, Book 2. Written by Debbie Civil. Narrated by Camille La'Akea Wong. Chapter 1. Gwen. Naretha. The Pe'urk Estate. I hated being in the stupid luxury box overlooking what Father called entertainment. We were in a stadium that had rows of elevated seats. My seat was overlooking the stage. Nina and Karen, two of my sisters, were fencing one another. Never mind that neither of them were professionals. This insane crowd was enjoying the action. The people who placed a bet on Karen groaned when she was hit in the chest with Nina's dull-tipped sword. I was hoping that my sister would run around the stage and tap Karen's chest for the last time. But then something horrible happened. Nina jerked as Karen's sword pierced her, the padding that covered the weapon's tip resting uselessly on the floor. Karen screamed when the sword slid into Nina's body. My heart nearly stopped when my innocent sister fell to the floor. Nina, the person who was quick to comfort and nurture, was lying there, her life draining out of her. She didn't deserve what happened. This wasn't right. One bastard down, another one to go. I knew the plan would work, Lady Valera said in Nirth. The glee in her eyes caused rage to twist in my gut. My hands lit up as I stared at the monster who was happy to see an innocent person fall. She was terrible, despicable, uncaring. She played games, poisoned people, hungered for others to fail. This woman abused people she was supposed to protect. Because of her status, she was untouchable. Rage flooded every ounce of my being, and the only thought that reached my brain was that this cruel woman needed to pay. I sent a wave of power into that monster, and she was no more. "No!" Christian mentally shouted to me. I felt fire burning in my body, and then I was somewhere else. Blazing pain wrapped around my wrist, causing my vision to grow fuzzy. I took a deep breath, trying to focus through the agony. Father shot me after I killed Lady Pe'urk, I thought to myself. Maybe the guard the evil lord ordered to terminate me failed. I probably found a way out of the estate. That part made no sense, since my slipper-clad feet showed no signs of a desperate run through the castle. Either way, I was on the platform, standing beside an orange flyer. If only I had the skill set to pilot one of those stupid things, I could get away. Too early. Christian's words made no sense. Nina is dead, I mentally said, the anger giving way to despair. Nina's life was over, my mother was on Janton, and me? What in the hell was I going to do? Don't move a muscle, a male voice warned. Crap. A guard caught up, interrupting my attempt to escape. Sorry, Gwen. I couldn't get you far enough. The Blicktar is interfering with my powers, Christian mentally explained to me. What is Blicktar? I mentally asked him. Focus. You aren't going to get away today, but I'll figure something out, Christian promised me. Don't leave me, I pleaded. I didn't feel the warmth of Christian's mind, which was unsettling. You can face me. Just hold your hands up first, the guard said. Cooperation was key. I turned to face the guard, who was tall, lanky, with black hair and golden brown skin. His eyes were violet, a shade that was more common on Naretha than on Earth. His expression was neutral, but his grip on the laser rod let me know that he was going to shoot if I made a sudden move. My energy was nearly depleted, which meant that I couldn't take this man down in a fight. Besides, if I attacked, what would be my next course of action? I would need to toss myself on Lord Pe'urk's mercy in hopes that a better way would reveal itself. What are my orders? I asked, knowing that a lot of pain was in my future. Who gave you a Hindral crystal? His question brought my mind back to sitting in Lady Valera's sitting room, writhing in agony as my crystal was destroyed. No one. This power comes naturally to me, I answered, figuring that being honest was the way to go. The guard frowned.
I was told that humans were a dry species.
Dry was what they called a species that didn't possess innate magical abilities. I shrugged, not understanding what was happening. My wrist stung again, and I hungered to peer at it. But the movement was likely going to cause this guard to fire his weapon.
Lord Pe'erk wants me to lock you in the dungeon. Will you go willingly?
Yes. What other choice was available to me? I could blast this guard into next week, but then what? I had no clue how to pilot a flyer. David was the only sibling I was comfortable enough to take rides from, and he was nowhere in sight. Besides, he would never help me out of this situation. His number one priority was his mother. He couldn't risk Father punishing her to send a message to him.
Lead the way. If you try anything, I'll shoot you,
he threatened. I won't try anything. Hoping that Father was greedy enough to keep me alive, I made the trek to the dungeon. The dungeon was nothing more than a high-ceilinged hallway with rows of closed doors on either side. The name was given to this place because it was a torture chamber of sorts. There were tables where Father could strap someone down and deliver different levels of light punishments. No bleeding required.
Room 19,
the guard said. I walked down the hallway and stopped when I spotted room 19. The guard pressed his palm against the door jamb and the door vanished, revealing a room with 2 twin-sized beds. Lex rested in one of them, his hands and feet holding chainless restraints, a cutting-edge device that Father splurged to put in some of the rooms. The devices made it impossible for someone to move their arms and legs. Father enjoyed that there were no chains involved. He liked his walls bare of bolts required to attach them to the wall. Besides, the restraints were portable and controlled by a remote, making it the perfect restraint to use for torture.
Get on the bed, the guard ordered.
Lex glared at the guard. Let me out of here. I'm telling you, Vanessa shoved me in here for helping Lady Valera with something. Lex was a despicable human being. He deserved to be in the dungeon.
If the Lord wanted you out of here, he would have freed you,
the guard replied, sounding annoyed. I ignored Lex and sat on the bed.
Lie down,
the guard ordered. Sighing, I followed his instructions, and was surprised when the guard nodded and left the room. The door reappeared, leaving me alone with my very unhappy brother.
Your father won't risk using a device on you. He's worried that you'll destroy his equipment,
Christian telepathically told me. Who are you? I asked, desperate to glean more information from the man in my head.
You're not ready for that answer yet, Gwen.
How do you know?
You could have taken out the guard. He was alone, and I could have taught you how to fly the flyer. But you're conditioned to obey your father, despite how angry you are with him.
His words pissed me off. Like I knew that you could have taught me how to use a flyer. Christian, I don't know you or what you're capable of, I mentally shouted at him.
Fair enough. But you aren't prepared to kill to defend yourself. The only reason why the lady was dead was because she admitted to the stunt with Nina,
Christian argued. The moment that the sword slammed into Nina's chest filled me with so much rage that I swore I could have destroyed the stadium with one pulse of light. Now that I was trapped in the dungeon, I was mentally and physically drained.
Nina isn't dead. Karen used a stolen ability to heal her.
Great. I acted too soon and was going to pay for it. Damn it. All I needed to do was wait a moment, and I would have seen a miracle unfold, right in front of my eyes. But then my mind focused on the second part of Christian's statement. What do you mean by stolen ability? I asked. Christian's warm presence abandoned me for a second time, and Lex's voice reached my ears.
How did you land in here, Gwen?
I killed Lady Valera, I flatly responded, hating myself for the impulsive move. It turned out that avenging Nina was all for nothing.
That must have felt good, Lex replied. But it was a stupid move. You're screwed.
I was about to tell Lex to shut up when the door opened. Moments later, Lord Pe'Urk stood in the doorway, a scowl twisting his features.
I would give you a light punishment, but it will only make you destroy the room. So I decided to do something else,
he said. Terror filled me when Father stepped aside to reveal a terrified-looking Claire. I wanted to vomit, having the feeling that I knew exactly what Lord Pe'Urk's intentions were. Lex glanced my way, horror in his brown eyes. Claire was dressed in black, a bruise on her cheekbone. She'd fought whatever guard took her from her quarters. "There's no need to hurt Claire," I said, desperate to reason with the evil man. Lord Pe'Urk laughed.
"If Rose were still here, I would do this to her. I figure since Anastasia is one of your closest friends, this will hurt."
Claire made eye contact with me, nothing but acceptance on her face. I needed to do something. I wasn't completely helpless, damn it! I sat up and attempted to reach my ball of light, but nothing happened.
"Your power is being blocked, Gwen."
"Sorry, there's nothing you can do," Christian said, sorrow in his mental voice. "No, this couldn't be happening. There had to be a way to get out of this. You don't have to do this. I had no idea that my power would react that way. Hell, you took out my Heintrail crystal. I'm not supposed to have abilities.
Shut up,
Father screeched.
My wife is dead, and all you can say is it was an accident? Gwen, you murdered the lady of this house in front of the Nerethian elite. I'm the laughingstock, all because I couldn't control one of my daughters.
The guard who had escorted me to the dungeon returned, carrying a sword. Oh, no. He was going to chop off Claire's head.
Zamir, terminate the female,
Lord Pe'Urk ordered. The man swung, and Claire's head was removed from her body with one strike. I closed my eyes, not desiring to see the rest of the carnage. Claire was gone, and Anastasia was none the wiser.
Open your eyes,
my father ordered. I slowly opened my eyes and deliberately focused on the face of my despicable father.
If you do anything to embarrass me, I'll kill Lex's mother next.
Lex sucked in a horrified breath. Understood, I rasped out.
Zamir, send the cleaning crew to take care of this mess,
my father instructed. Then he stormed out of the room. Chapter 2. Lena. Neretha. Rebel Base. "This is where we'll be staying?" Molly asked as the flyer landed on the towering platform, built in the middle of nowhere. Her eyes were holding doubt, which was expected. The place wasn't glamorous, and it lacked the flash that my sisters were accustomed to seeing. "It isn't about the infrastructure. It's about the technology," I said. Molly snorted. "Sure, tell Daddy Dearest that." "I'm more worried about removing my Heintrail crystal," Amy shakily admitted. "Why? You can't access any abilities." Molly obviously didn't understand where Amy's mind was. "Molly, she's worried about missing the opportunity to develop an ability. Amy, it's necessary to remove your crystal. If you don't, you die." My words elicited a gasp from both sisters. The side of the flyer vanished, and I stepped into the blazing Nerethian heat. The sun radiated scorching heat for 16 hours a day, 4 more hours than Earth. My sisters joined me, both of them wearing the valuable jumpsuits that Jade crafted for them. Jade. Longing hit me at the thought that my twin was far from my grasp. For years, our circumstances kept us apart. Where would we be standing at the end of it all? "Follow me," I ordered. We descended the stairs and walked towards the unassuming, black 2-story building. I wrapped my hand around the warm doorknob and it clicked, recognizing my handprint. I pushed the door open and was welcomed by frigid air. We entered and the door slammed shut behind us. The place is nothing more than a hallway, Molly said, her green eyes glaring at the dead end 20 feet away from us.
That's the beauty of it, Molly. We need to go down. I tapped on the wall 5 times to activate the floor lift. The floor slowly descended, Amy and Molly letting out surprised shrieks. I shook my head at the pair, since I did warn them. If they weren't good listeners, they only had themselves to blame. As soon as the floor stopped moving, I led them to the wall in front of me and pressed my hand against it. The wall vanished, revealing a wide corridor with doors on either side. I turned to eye my 2 sisters. Once you make it through here, there is no way out. I won't let you go back to the surface until Father dies, I said in a blasé tone. So, we'll die old and alone? Molly complained. It's better than dying young, Amy tossed at our sister. I knew so much, but very little at the same time. My instincts were driving me to keep Amy and Molly safe. It was odd, the knowing that flooded me. If they were to resurface, they would both reach a bloody end. What was coming? Any time I focused my thoughts on that question, only images of shattered buildings and piles of bloody bodies popped in my mind, along with the horrid scent of decay. But why? What planet was I seeing? The truth would reveal itself soon enough. That's how my gift worked. I just thought of something, Molly said, her green eyes wide with terror. If you remove your Heimdall crystal, you'll no longer be able to see the future. I know, but if I keep it in my body, the crystal will kill me. I've seen it, I said. Then I led the way to the door on the left. I was hoping that the surprise wouldn't piss off my sisters. I walked into the infirmary and smiled at the sister that could now reveal herself. Leah stood there, wearing a lab coat, her confident grin making my heart warm. I gave her a brief hug and waved at Charles, the physician who purchased her from Lord Pe'Urk 6 years ago. You betrayed us, Molly cried. That cow spied on us. Leah rolled her eyes. If that were really true, I would have told Father that you guys planned on having Gwen spy on the suitors before the auction. You started a fight with us, Molly accused. Our father expects us to act a certain way. I merely gave him a show. Leah's responses were placating Amy, but Molly had her doubts. In order to stay alive, we need her. I've seen it. My words didn't soothe Molly, who scowled at Leah. Where's Jade? Leah asked, changing the subject. She knew how badly I wanted to be reunited with my twin. We had to leave. I missed my opportunity to snatch her. The prince was too close to her. We'll have to hope that David can figure something out. But you're a mean girl. Why would you care about Jade? You don't care about anyone, Molly protested. Judging by her outfit, I would have to guess that Leah was playing a part. Amy looked impressed. Leah rubbed her hands together. The easiest way to remove the Heimdall crystal is to break it down slowly. It's similar to the serum Gwen took, but Lord Pe'Urk's physician gave her a nearly fatal dose. Charles and I measured out a dose that won't knock us out for days, but we'll have to take it once a day for a week. What happens if you don't take the dose every day? Amy wondered. Then the crystal will only partly dissolve. That could be dangerous. So I don't recommend anyone to do that. Leah shot Molly a hard look. Our troublesome sister raised a hand in protest. I'm sucking down every drop of the serum. I like the idea of being rid of that stupid crystal. What about the trackers? Molly demanded. We'll have to remove those with a quick procedure. Who would like to go first? Charles asked. I'll do it, Molly said. Charles directed Amy and I to wait outside, and we complied.
Amy shot me a concerned expression. Will it be safe to remove the trackers? Yes. I had visions of us after the trackers are removed, and we're healthy. My words caused a scowl to appear on her face. Why didn't you tell us how the night would end? Did it occur to you that some of us welcomed a marriage? I'm still a Perk, which means that father has rights to me. Amy's words stunned me, though they did make sense. You'd rather marry a stranger than hide out until Lord Perk dies? Yes. At least if I was married, that means I'm no longer under my father's control. Your crystal is about to be removed. You won't know what Obi is going to plan for us. At least Lord Perk is predictable. I didn't want to express this in front of Molly, but maybe securing a marriage for us would be better. Can't one of your associates marry us? Something felt off about Amy's panic, but I shoved that away, since I knew my sister to be practical. Risk-taking wasn't something she did willingly. I have your best interests at heart. Our sperm donor doesn't. Trust me, as we speak, he's about to kill someone. Gwen? Sadness filled Amy's eyes at the thought. No, I said, knowing that there was no way to change Lord Perk's path. He would use death to control the living because that strategy worked for him. Who, then? We can't change it, Amy. Believe me when I tell you, it's best that no one knows what's about to happen. But you can stop it. Can't you send your people to the Perk estate and save Gwen? No. I've seen what happens if I interfere. Trust me, I pleaded, hoping Amy would listen to me. I have no choice, since I'm stuck down here. Leah poked her head out. Who's next? I'll go, Amy said. After she left me alone in the hallway, I sank to the floor and bawled my eyes out. Chapter 3. Jade. Naretha. The Rima estate. A knock on the door caused my eyes to flutter open. I shoved the blanket off my body and got out of bed. Who could it be? Surely Lady Anneli understood that Prince Zamire and I were barely friends. A dull ache still flared in my heart, hurt and betrayal not doing much to get rid of it. Zamire deceived me, his act of a simple lord seeping under my skin. But no. Forget lord. Zamire was a freaking prince who was betrothed to an ice queen who ordered the death of my sister. Worst of all, Lena was now a member of the Rima estate's harem, which meant that Anneli could possibly finish the job. It was unfortunate that Nina, Karen, and I were placed in separate cottages. It wasn't like we could watch out for each other. The door opened and Lord Rima himself entered, followed by Anneli. I stiffened, having a terrible feeling that this visit was going to be unpleasant. The father and daughter pair were dressed in simple clothing, a silk shirt and pants for the lord, and a black cotton dress for his spoiled daughter. Lady Anneli's eyes were puffy, her blonde hair up in a crooked ponytail. Good morning, Lord Rima. Can I offer you anything to eat or drink? I asked in flawless Naretha's language, aiming to be hospitable. If I was going to toss questions at the pair, I needed to be pleasant. Maybe then they would give me information. What did you say to him? Anneli shouted. Her father shot an annoyed look at her. Why are you blaming Jade? You were the one who disobeyed me. You heard what the prince said. He wants a submissive wife. Of course, Zamire would want a wife that was docile. Why suffer the inconvenience of having a bride that would challenge Naretha's stifling laws? She said something against me, Anneli accused. I didn't even know you existed until you confronted me, I said in defense of myself. Ignore my daughter. She's only supposed to listen, Lord Rima snapped. Anneli scowled, but she crossed her arms and stayed quiet. Is Nina okay? My question caught Lord Rima off guard, but I was desperate to hear news about my sister.
She's afraid, but healthy. I can't believe that Anelli thought to harm another woman. The king is thinking of punishing her, but I'm sure that our prince will protect her. Despite the fact that he broke the betrothal, he cares deeply for Anelli. They were a love match.
Rage suddenly slammed into me, so sharply that I staggered back a step. Hell no! There was no way Zamire could be invested in protecting someone so vile. He would never betray me by daring to have feelings for her. That scum actually touched what belonged to me. I scowled, my hands beginning to burn up. Anelli needed to pay for touching my...
Jade, are you all right?
Lord Rima inquired. His voice chased away the blinding rage, leaving me feeling concerned. I wasn't the so angry I can take off your head kind of woman. What was happening to me? I'm fine, I rasped out, collapsing onto the bed. My legs were weak, and it wasn't as if Lord Rima would have a problem with me staying seated.
Are you sure? We have a physician on site who can examine you, he offered.
I was pretty sure that my Hyndral crystal was beginning to influence my moods. The Nerethians valued the Hyndral crystal, which meant that I wasn't going to part with it anytime soon. I'm fine, I assured him.
For my own curiosity, Jade, I need you to tell me about every interaction you had with Prince Zamire in detail.
Great. The head of this stupid harem was going to make me relive every confusing moment with him? Fine. It wasn't interesting. We had a deal. I would feed him and he would bring me books, I replied.
Why did you have to feed him?
We have a wonderful chef, Lord Rima boasted. Awkward much? He said he didn't like the food. You're lying, Anelli cried. Zamire always has seconds at dinner. Why did he really come here?
I told you, for the food.
Why else would he come? I asked.
Lord Rima rubbed his face. Jade, was he inappropriate with you?
His words held a sharpness that made the room frigid. No, I'm telling you the truth, I pleaded.
I know. You feel betrayed by the prince. I'm guessing that he never told you who he actually was.
His response caused alarms to ring in my head. How do you know? Anelli laughed. Father is an empath. Go on, Father. Tell her that we see through her lies.
Daughter, she's telling you the truth. Perhaps Zamire lied to get into Jade's good graces, Lord Rima suggested.
But why? Lady Anelli cried.
Jade, it's obvious that my daughter isn't going to cease her complaints until you are removed from our estate. So, you'll be the woman that my knights will compete to win. I need you to dress in your best garment. A guard will fetch you in a couple of hours, he announced.
Anelli's smug smile gave me the chills. Can... Nina... Damn it, I couldn't put together an actual sentence. Knights were going to compete for me.
Your sisters will be at the event. Don't you fear, Jade. You'll be able to say goodbye, Lord Rima assured me. Let's take our leave, Anelli. Jade needs time to prepare.
It took everything I had not to slug that sexist control freak. Oh yes, let us leave so Jade can get ready. She's nothing more than property to sell off. One way or another, I would find a way to show Nerethian males that women weren't only valuable because they had the capability to give birth. I supposed that today wasn't going to be that day. The Lord exited the cottage, his daughter shooting me a smug smile before following her father. I dressed in a purple gown and slippers, uncaring that my gown wasn't silver. Lord Rima couldn't be bothered to provide me materials, so I was wearing what I owned. My dark hair was placed in a simple updo that consisted of a couple of braids that ended with a puff on the back of my head. Makeup wasn't provided, so I went barefaced. No one bothered to knock the second time. The door flew open and Tuscan, the guard that escorted me on my first trip to the cottages, stood in the doorway beside Gabar, the guard that attacked Selly. My heart froze, the hatred in Gabar's beady eyes nearly giving me a heart attack. "Follow me," Tuscan ordered. "Not with him around," I blurted out, wanting to hide under the bed. I wasn't stupid enough to be at Gabar's mercy. "Jade, if you refuse, you'll receive a light punishment," Tuscan warned. Crap. I couldn't alert the Lord and Lady that the punishment didn't affect me. Instead, I came up with a compromise. "I'll follow Gabar and Tuscan can walk behind me," I said. "You're just a female. Do what you're told," Gabar hissed. "You're just a lonely guard. Why don't you do what you're told?" I'd read up on enough history to know that a female of a harem could order around a simple estate guard. "Just do what she says, Gabar." "We're going to be late," Tuscan said. Gabar scowled and began walking. I followed him, sweat clinging to me as the Nerethian sun beat down on me. Ugh, this region only had one temperature. Scorching. We stopped at the cottage beside me, and I braced myself as Gabar fetched Selly. The Nerethian woman rushed over to my side as if I could provide her protection. Gabar chuckled under his breath. "Hi," Selly squeaked out. "Hi," I said, trying to force myself to be patient. The inner Sheena I sometimes channeled hungered to cuss her out for lying, but I kept my mouth shut and followed Gabar as we collected the women of our harem as we walked. Nina and Karen were the last to join us. Nina happily stood on my other side, her brown eyes filled with worry. She wore the jumpsuit I sewed for her, while Karen opted for a lightweight silver day dress. The veteran members of the harem had yet to introduce themselves. They were tall, slender, with raven-colored hair. The only difference between them was that one had violet eyes, while the other's eyes were a lime green color. Man, that color was striking, to say the least. I wanted to speak to my sister, but was afraid to be overheard. Selly was clearly untrustworthy, so I shut my mouth and allowed Gabar to lead us to an area that was halfway between the castle. There were a couple of rows of elevated seats that were protected by a dome-shaped roof that was held up by beams. The seating faced a stone platform that was 5 feet off the ground and the size of an Olympic-sized pool. Gabar led us to the first row, and one by one, the ladies of the harem sat. I managed to snag a seat between Karen and Nina. Thankfully, Gabar and Tuscan left after their duty to us was completed. "Why does that guard hate you?" Karen asked, gesturing at Gabar. "Because I beat him up. He was trying to force himself on someone," I said. A jolt suddenly went through my body, making me feel unsettled. A second later, Prince Zamire appeared with 2 gold-clad guards at his back. Chapter 4. Jade. Neretha. The Rima estate. "Can I talk to you? Or will you scream at me again?" Zamire asked, his dark eyes holding nothing but fury. "Depends. Are you going to apologize for lying to me?" I shot back. "So, I'm a prince. What does it matter?" "Thanks to you, I'm being punished. Knights are going to fight for my hand in marriage." Prince Zamire scowled at me, his fists balling up. "You couldn't stay out of trouble?" "You're acting like this is my fault. You should have told me about your engagement to Lady Anelli." Zamire looked like he wanted to toss me out of a plane without a parachute. "Lady Anelli isn't my betrothed. If she were, the world would know about it." "Right. You dumped her. That's why I'm going to get married today." "Lady Anelli was never my betrothed," he spat. Lady Anelli had a different impression. I'm thinking that since she went through the trouble of punishing me for daring to breathe your precious air, she was led to believe that she was going to be your wife. After all, you love misleading people."
"Prince Zamire!" Lord Rima greeted in an excited tone. Prince Zamire turned to face the lord of the estate. "I expressed interest in adding Jade to my harem," he said in a calm tone. Fury burned me so hot that a spot on my wrist began to ache. Who in the hell did Zamire think he was? He thought that it was as simple as acquiring me, like I was some object? "I'm afraid that Jade isn't for sale. The winner of this tournament will marry her tonight."
"Tonight?" Nina took my hand, her grip firm. "I hope a kind man wins," she whispered. I don't want anyone to win me. Why is Nina acting like this behavior is acceptable? Right. Lord Pe'erk raised her to be submissive. I thought to myself, since you broke the betrothal to my dear daughter, I've decided to ignore your interests. Now, Prince Zamire, you should sit and enjoy the show. I heard a rumor that you love a lively celebration. I've assured to only have your favorites cooked for Jade's wedding feast." The prince glared at me a final time, then gestured to Karen. "Move," he ordered. Karen stood, and Zamire sat beside me, his presence causing my stupid heart to flutter. What in the hell is wrong with you, Jade? This entitled jerk tried to purchase you. He has no respect for you or your choices. My mental lashing couldn't stop my body from craving his touch. "Do you want to get married?" Zamire coolly asked me. "Does my opinion actually matter?" I shot back. "Why are you dressed like that?" His accusing tone caused my wrist to burn some more. I bit my tongue, not wanting to cause myself to dig a deeper hole of trouble. "Father," Anneli said, her face twisted in a sneer, "I think that the guards should also be able to fight for Jade's hand." "What do you have in mind, Anneli?" He clearly knew his conniving daughter well. "Gabar is our most trusted guard. I personally nominate him for the tournament," Anneli said. To no one's surprise, Lord Rima nodded. Zamire eyed me, concern in his dark eyes. "Who's Gabar?" he softly asked, his lips close to my ear. "The guard I rescued Sally from. He was trying to take what wasn't offered, and I managed to knock him off her." Zamire shook his head and leaned back. "If you managed to best him, he can't be much of a challenge for knights," he wrongfully assumed. His words weren't surprising in the least. Zamire believed that women were nothing more than property. Nina squeezed my hand, and my eyes fell on her. She shot me a determined expression, her eyes radiating nothing but support. "Let's commence with the celebration," Lord Rima declared. Moments later, 2 tall, balding men carrying swords leapt onto the platform. A horrid whistle sounded, and they began fighting one another. The man with the facial hair was clearly the superior dueler. He knocked his opponent's feet from under him in 10 seconds and pressed the tip of his sword to his neck. "He doesn't want to win," Zamire quietly told himself. I glanced his way, gifting him with a scowl. "Why? I'm not worth fighting for?" I snapped. "No. Pay attention, Jade," Zamire urged, and, unfortunately, I listened to him. Round after round, each knight barely lifted his sword, allowing the balding man with the facial hair to win. Sure, they would try to fight, to make it look good, but these seasoned warriors made mistakes that a novice wouldn't dream to make. One guy accidentally dropped his sword and didn't bother picking it up. Another guy left himself open. A terrible feeling began building in my gut as I watched each match unfold. 11 rounds later, Gabar leaped onto the platform. He shot a smirk my way, and I shuddered. If he won this match, I vowed to kill him. There was no way that sleazeball would get his hands on me. Gabar swung his sword, but the knight easily countered his swing. He finally begun using his skills to put up a fight. Gabar was on the defense, backing up, barely able to defend himself. Whatever deal the knights had, Gabar was obviously not part of it. The knight sliced Gabar's sword arm, causing blood to flow to the platform. Gabar snarled, his face twisting in rage. He quickly transferred his sword to the other hand and swung at the knight, who parried his blow. I was beginning to relax, knowing that Gabar was no match for the knight. I eyed Zamire, who was trying to puzzle something out. Why was he so invested in the outcome of this degrading contest? It wasn't like Zamire truly cared for me. If he had, his deception never would have occurred. "Gabar!" Anelli shouted. Without reason, the guard dropped to the ground. The knight looked perplexed, his sword rising for a strike. Moments later, a beam of purple light crashed into his chest, his body collapsing. At first, I assumed that the beam was a light punishment, but light punishments were usually yellow. Blood began flowing from the knight's chest, his eyes filling with confusion. Gabar took the opportunity to slit the knight's throat, making him the winner. Anelli stood and let out a jubilant cheer, but everyone else stayed put, as if the stillness would help us process what just happened. "Doris!" a man shouted. "You killed Doris!" Nina's wide eyes landed on me, her lips mouthing one word: "Run." I got to my feet, intent on leading the charge back to the cottages. 5 knights ran onto the stage, their swords drawn. "You can't kill Gabar! He's our winner!" Lord Rima shouted, but it appeared that no one was going to listen to him. I took 2 steps when another purple light fell from the ceiling, heading straight for me. Rage filled me, and I raised my hand, allowing a pulse of power to escape my palm. It crashed into the light, which harmlessly fell to the grass. I eyed the stage, not surprised when 2 more knights were downed by the purple light. But at least they were still moving. Gabar ran off the platform, his gaze landing on me. There was no way I would let him touch me. I just couldn't. A scream caused me to turn around. Lady Anelli held some sort of controller in her hand. "Jade, if you don't go with Gabar, I'll kill your precious sister," she purred. I saw Lord Rima, who looked put out. "Run," Nina pleaded. It was obvious that my sister didn't like my odds with Gabar. I eyed Zamire, who scowled at me. "I have no choice," I softly said. Zamire rushed forward and grabbed my arm. Apparently, he'd rather have ownership over me than allow me to marry someone else. "Anelli, I'll marry you right now if you drop this," he bargained. Anelli sneered. "As if I'd marry you. You publicly humiliated me by choosing her." I eyed Anelli's hand, wondering if I could use my power on her. I couldn't allow her to hurt Nina. Moments later, the entitled lady let out a shriek and dropped the remote control. A knight suddenly appeared and swung his blade at Anelli. She managed to move in a blur to avoid the blow. "She has super speed," the prince explained. Anelli suddenly appeared in front of us, her eyes shooting sparks. "I can't do anything to you, Prince Zamire, but I can hurt Jade," she threatened. I feared that Anelli would find a way to end Nina's life. I'd marry Gabar to protect my sister. "Jade!" Nina shouted. Her warning caused me to step backwards, thinking that maybe Anelli had a weapon hidden somewhere on her body. Then, what looked like lightning filled the sky, the intensity of the light causing me to close my eyes. A wave of energy crashed into me, making me feel like my body was about to explode. I slipped into unconsciousness before I could break apart. Chapter 5. Sheena. Naretha's Atmosphere. I sat up in bed, glaring at the night that was forced to share it with me. Adding 5 additional passengers resulted in tight living spaces. That meant that a blow to the ribs served as a painful alarm clock. I suppose I could have demanded to share a bed with Derek, but it didn't sit right to sleep next to a guy who wasn't over Mira. Hell, his freaking ex-wife was on the same ship. I rubbed my side, deciding that sleep was going to elude me. According to the display on my wall, it was 4 o'clock in the morning in Silversmith, Massachusetts. My body already ached from the times Amber must have gotten me in the night. I got out of bed and put on my flip-flops and left the room and headed to the sitting area. Derek sat in one of the recliners, a tablet on his lap. When he looked up, his stunning green eyes met mine. For a moment, I allowed the desire I felt for him to soak into every part of me. But then, the memory of his wedding overrode my need to jump his bones. "Can't sleep?" I asked.
"Winston snores,"
he explained. "How's Angelo?" I asked, worried about the Najorian who dropped into a deep sleep as soon as we arrived on the spaceship. Derek looked annoyed, which was surprising.
"He's fine. So glad that you made friends with him."
"You're jealous?" I couldn't believe the conclusion I was coming to. Was this guy for real? If he believed in the fact that we were soulmates, why would he be jealous of another man?
"Not for the reason you think," Derek replied.
Wow. Most men would have denied the accusation.
"I will never lie to you, Sheena."
Right. He could read my mind. Just perfect. "Why are you jealous, then?" I asked, deciding to plop in a recliner. Derek sighed.
"It seems to be easy for you to open up to him. When it comes to me, you shove me in a box in your mind and don't acknowledge me."
"First, you tell me that we're soulmates. I don't know if you are aware, but I hate choices being made for me. But I was willing to take my time, get to know you. Then I had that vision of you with Mira and realized that maybe I wasn't your first choice either. Derek, I saw how much you loved her. Are you sure you want to give that up for someone you barely know?" My soul told me that my question was unfair, but I couldn't help it. I hated that he said those sacred words to another woman. I, Derek, take you, Mira, to be my eternal spouse. I will love, cherish, honor, and stay true to you. I promise to forsake all others and love you with everything in me. I promise to allow my soul to enter the afterlife only when yours does." The memory of him saying those words nearly broke my heart. Derek rubbed his forehead.
"I get that you feel betrayed, Sheena. You should. But I think you're pushing me away because you didn't choose me."
"No, I'm ignoring the spark between us because you lied to me. I'm nothing like Mira, which means I'm not your type. You just want me because chemistry told you that you should. Since you're in my mind, you have all the answers. You don't even have to ask me," I quipped.
"Sheena, let's try to at least be friends."
"Fine," I grudgingly replied. In truth, Derek's very presence made sparks dance all over my body. I fought the desire to jump into his lap and bury my face in his neck.
"How did you meet Jade?"
he asked. Jade. How was my friend faring? In kindergarten. Brittany Flint dumped out my snack, just to be mean. Jade offered to share her teddygrams with me.
"You were bullied?"
Anger flashed in Derek's eyes. I had no doubt that if we were on Earth, Brittany Flynn would have to look over her shoulder every day of her miserable life. "Isn't everyone?" I countered.
"We shouldn't lie to each other, Sheena," Derek reminded me.
I was tempted to toss out that he didn't disclose that he had a wife, but then I decided not to beat a dead horse. If Derek and I were going to become friends, We needed to move past Mira. Can you stay out of my head?
In general, or at this very second?
In general, I clarified.
Usually. But sometimes I can't help myself.
Can you help yourself? I feel uncomfortable. I don't like that you have an advantage over me. Derek nodded.
If I sense that you're in danger, all bets are off. I won't compromise on that.
Okay. If I'm kidnapped by some creep, be sure to read my mind so you can track me down. By the way, Brittany Flynn bullied Jade and me until sophomore year. I don't know what made her stop, but I suspect that Amber got sick of her rude comments. I decided not to get into what really happened. I heard through the grapevine that Amber gave Brittany a broken nose and threatened to break something else if she didn't leave me alone.
What are your hobbies?
Derek asked. Before the castor crap got dumped on me, I wanted to be a Broadway star, I dreamily said.
Favorite musical?
It's a tie between Beauty and the Beast and Chicago, I replied. What about you? What do aliens do for fun?
I don't have fun,
Derek admitted.
Working for the king gives me little free time. I'm lucky that I was able to slip away. When I'm not collecting intel for him, I spend my time reading.
Ugh, this poor guy needed to live a little. If I decided to keep him, we'd find a way to travel the world together. Footsteps reached my ears, telling me that our getting to know you session was just about to end. Rose appeared, her tired eyes filled with determination. We need to start transporting the humans out of here, Rose said, without preamble. Oh, hell no. She had crap to answer for. Why didn't you alert Celeste to the fact that the Norathians were on Earth? I demanded. Rose let out a tired sigh. You have no idea what the guild is really like, do you? No. Why would I? If you decide to date Derek, you'll have to answer to them. Because you're a caster with powers, the guild will see fit to match you with someone who has ascended. They won't risk you diluting your bloodline by mixing with a human. Julia never mentioned an arranged marriage, I insisted. That's because you're still young. I guarantee, once you return, Celeste will approach you and ask if you'll consider dating an eligible bachelor. If you agree, you'll be set up. If you disagree, she'll try bribery first. If the situation gets out of control, she'll call in the rest of the guild. Let me tell you, once that happens, everyone in your coven will start giving you the cold shoulder. The covens are competitive. The guild will issue a decree, and you'll either get married or be excommunicated. That means that you'll lose your family and your coven members, Rose explained. I couldn't imagine a life where my family refused to speak to me. They cared about me. Is she lying? I asked Derek.
No.
His grim expression made me feel ill. Goodness, could I lose Derek before I could even have him? I haven't even joined a coven yet, I said, hoping that my refusal to pledge my loyalty to a coven would somehow improve my situation. Rose's expression was dubious. Where do you live? She asked. Silversmith, Massachusetts, I replied, not seeing the harm in answering her question. I thought that Celeste's name sounded familiar. I used to be part of the LA coven, but her reputation sure precedes her. She was the one who excommunicated her own baby sister for marrying a human. You never met Celeste? I asked, confused. After all, Amber lived in Silversmith, and Max often picked her up for visits. No. When I was with Max, we lived in Boston. I knew better than to step foot in Celeste's territory, Rose hotly said. You were excommunicated for being with Gwen's father? I asked. As soon as I announced my pregnancy, my coven leader, Mary, gave me the boot. I hadn't figured out that Manor was an alien until after Gwen was born.
By then, I was too frightened to tell the guild. The last thing I needed to do was tip Manor off. He would have captured any caster female he could get his hands on.
Derek held up a hand, a scowl marring his face.
Gwen kidnapped Jade,
he blurted out.
Lord Pe'erk wanted to add Jade to his harem. Apparently, Jade is his daughter. Jade also has a twin sister named Lena. Where in the hell is Jade?
Derek's words made me feel sick. I had blindly rescued Rose, thinking that she was a fellow caster who had been snatched by aliens. But this broad had information she couldn't be bothered sharing with us. You knew I was looking for Jade, didn't you? I asked, my voice tight.
Lena told me that you'd find her. You're my best bet at saving Gwen. Chapter 6. Jade. Location unknown. The slash of an unforgiving gust of wind woke me up. What the hell? Neretha was scorching hot, the temperature rarely dipping below 70 degrees. Why was I cold? I blinked my eyes open and sat up, my entire body aching, the way it had after I participated in the 5K run for breast cancer last year. I scanned the area, puzzled by what my mind was registering. I was in a room that was made of stone. The floor I sat on was cushioned by a thick, black rug. Prince Zamire sat beside me, his back leaning against the wall. His eyes were unfocused. It appeared that he was sedated. I let out a yawn and longed for something warm to wrap around me. My hands tingled, and I pressed them onto my lap, right on the fabric of my gown. The tingling grew unbearable for a moment, then the cold vanished. I was toasty warm, as if I had a space heater blowing on my body. Something isn't adding up. First, I manipulated the light punishment, then the killing beam. Now I can put a spell on clothing? I don't recall Amy telling me that the Hydral crystal gave someone that kind of ability. I eyed Zamire, who was shivering, and made a decision. I needed to share the wealth. I got to my feet and hobbled over to him. I pressed my hand to his shoulder and the tingling started up again. I asked the tingling to create a protection from the heat and a protective armor. The power flew from me and I groaned, a spike of pain driving through my skull. I collapsed to the floor and closed my eyes. I breathed through the pain, which gradually faded. A zapping sound filled the air. What now? I thought to myself. I opened my eyes just in time to see the wall in front of me vanish. Our abductors entered. The three tall strangers were dressed in furry pants and furry vests. They also completed the look with fur capes. Their boots were black and thick, which told me that this room was cold, even for them. I hate Hydral crystals, the female standing between the guards complained. She was nearly 7 feet tall with red hair that hung to her waist. She had pale skin and brown eyes with a slight glow. Don't you worry, princess. We'll remove that corrupt technology from the both of them, the guard to the left said. He, along with the other male companion, both had cropped hair and trimmed beards. The only thing that set them apart were the color of their eyes. The guard to the left's eyes were green, and his partner's eyes were brown. Only the woman's eyes glowed. But still, how disrespectful for them to flaunt their powers in our faces. They couldn't be subtle? I hate Nerethians, the woman complained. And look at his companion. It's like she understands us. It took a stupid amount of time for me to realize that these strangers weren't speaking Nirth or English. I tasted the words in my mouth, feeling a tingling sensation on my tongue. What do you want with me? I asked in the stranger's language. The female's eyes bugged. Hydral crystals can teach Nerethians how to speak languages? Her question was obviously directed at her friends, so I kept quiet. Who knows? The man with the green eyes said. The Nerethian scum love to steal powers. Maybe they found another race of people to imprison and steal from. Jade, who are these people? Zamire demanded in English.
No clue, I replied, eyeing the prince, who was more alert.
How do you speak their language? The prince demanded, a hint of suspicion in his eyes.
I think it's the hydral crystal. My tongue tingled, and then I was able to speak these people's language. I wanted to smack Prince Zamire over the head for doubting me, but I refrained, knowing that hitting him wouldn't help us escape. We needed to work together in order to get out of this mess.
Hydral crystals don't do that sort of thing, Zamire said.
Well, mine did. Maybe me being half human has something to do with it, I snapped. I let out a surprised yelp when the female pressed her large hand against my forehead.
How are you warm? She asked in Nirth.
My intel tells me that Nerethians can barely tolerate the cold.
The hydral crystal, I replied.
Zamire shot me a disapproving glare.
Stop being so forthcoming. I ignored him. If playing nice would keep me alive, I would do it in a heartbeat. The woman removed her hand from my skin and let out a breath.
I will have the hydral crystal removed from the both of you. Then we will discuss your future, the female announced.
I'm Prince Zamire of Neretha. What do you want with me?
Zamire demanded in Nirth. The female grinned. Genetic material. But we'll get to that, my prince. Go to sleep.
Moments later, the room began filling with vapor. 2 metallic, human-looking drones slid out of the floor. One of them made its way over to me. Its metallic eyes began glowing a soft orange as its gaze perused my body. I wanted to roll away, to escape the possibility of getting operated on. For now, the hydral crystal was a tool I could use to protect myself from these strange people. Without it, I'd be as helpless as I was when David and Gwen kidnapped me from my safe life on Earth. That thought only made me long to speak to Jane and Tim, the foster parents who had loved me. Of course, while I was under their roof, I was suspicious of them, waiting for the other shoe to drop. When I spoke to them again, I'd apologize and bask in their acceptance. Meeting my biological father made me realize how lucky I was to find people like the Banes. According to Tripp, the female has a hydral crystal and a tracker. I'll remove them both, the female said in her native language. What about the prince? The man with the green eyes inquired. He only has the crystal. I wonder who the female is, the woman running the show said. I didn't bother cluing her into my situation because the vapors were starting to cause drowsiness to come over me. I blinked furiously, not wanting to suffer through a surgery by drone. But my body lost its fight, and I fell unconscious. Jade, wake up, a voice pleaded. I slowly opened my eyes to discover that I was still in the freezing room. I sat up and felt pain radiating from my left wrist. Groaning, I eyed the skin, and saw that it was softly glowing. WTF? I eyed Zamire, who was wearing a silk robe, nothing that would actually protect him from the cold. The tingling started in my glowing hand, and I quickly pressed it to my robe and the cold vanished. I don't think they took out my hydral crystal, I whispered before putting my hand on Zamire's sleeve. It took little time for his shivering to stop. Zamire shook his head. They removed your crystal and your tracker. They made me watch, the prince said, a haunted expression on his face. Then how do I still have powers? I demanded, doubt filling my voice. Could they have implanted memories in Zamire? I saw that drone cut into your flesh and take out your crystal. The last thing I wanted to do was piss Zamire off. We needed to work together in order to escape our circumstances. I grazed his hand with my fingertips and gasped in surprise. Desire slammed into me, the emotion so strong that I slumped against the wall.
Zamire let out a snarl. The next thing I knew, his hands were on me. He lifted me onto his lap and his lips crashed into mine. I gripped the back of his head as our tongues collided. The first taste made my soul hunger to be near him. His hands traveled up and down my spine, causing flames of passion to ignite inside me. I was overwhelmed by the feelings that were coursing through my heart. I was nearly driven into madness. It was difficult, but I kept myself from completely giving in. Zamire, apparently, was living in another zone. His hands suddenly left my back, and his finger undid the sash that held my robe closed. His hands began exploring my skin, his kisses only increasing in intensity. Before I could give in to what my body wanted, Zamire broke off our kiss. His eyes focused, and he let out a breath. "What in the hell are you doing to me, Jade?" he whispered, his lips brushing against my forehead. "I don't know. I wanted you before, but..." He chuckled, his lips tilted in a grin. "Good to know. What do you think the Janton did to us?" Did to us? It was difficult to think when my body wanted me to kiss him again. "Jade, think about it. We go from being attracted to each other and holding a lot of restraint to barely being able to keep our hands off each other," Zamire reasoned. I let out a breath. I doubt that they would have injected us with an aphrodisiac. Maybe what we did is a side effect of the vapor they used to knock us out. Zamire pondered something. "I don't want to fight it." Zamire peeled my robe open and admired the view it revealed. Desire filled me again, and all I wanted was for Zamire to kiss me. He kissed my lips, and I was sucked back into the overwhelming vacuum of passion. He abruptly pulled away and took a deep breath. "I can feel your emotions. It's so overwhelming," he confessed. I was going to ask Zamire to elaborate, but our abductors returned. Chapter 7. Jade. Location unknown. Zamire quickly tied my robe closed, his determined expression making uncertainty fill me. Our captor was going to get a piece of the prince's mind. The aggression in his eyes was the first clue. If I didn't prevent him from exerting his will, he would make things worse for us. I got off his lap and faced the scowling woman. It was obvious that she didn't approve of the way we passed the time. Her two friends were standing behind her, their eyes holding amusement. The woman reached out and touched my forehead, her eyes going wide with shock. "You are still warm." "I removed your Heindral crystal," she said in her native tongue. I must not have concealed the surprise that flashed across my face. "You can still understand me?" "Yes," I said. "Perfect. Make the prince understand me. I hate speaking Nurth," the woman ordered. "I'm not sure that I can..." "Try it, or you lose a finger," she threatened. "Okay then." I touched Zamire's shoulder and concentrated, willing for the robe to help him understand our abductor. After the tingling sensation stopped, I slumped against the wall, the effort stealing my energy. "Prince Zamire, I'm Princess Shala of the Janton Empire. Do you understand my words?" "Yes," Zamire replied in Nurth. "Good. Since you betrayed me by taking a lover, my people wish for me to punish you in some way. I intend on doing so after I extract the genetic material I need," she said. "Yeah, right. Like the Janton people were concerned about Zamire's unfaithfulness to her. This princess was full of herself. I eyed Zamire, who was clearly confused. "Why would you care if I take a lover?" Zamire asked. My stomach flipped at the thought of the prince being my lover. Shala frowned. "Because I am your betrothed? It was part of the treaty that your pathetic father made with us after we brought his people to their knees." The prince appeared stunned.
Apparently, the king hadn't informed his son of the treaty. After all, he was previously betrothed to Lady Anneli. What treaty? Zamire asked, his posture straightening. The Treaty of Surrender. After we wiped out most of your females, your father realized that he couldn't defeat us. So, my brother, Emperor Tulda, came up with a list of things the king had to accomplish in 7 years. Year 1. Stop the production of Hyndral crystals. According to our spies, your father has been distributing false crystals to his people. In fact, your lady friend had one, Shala explained. My crystal was fake? I glanced down at the symbols on my wrist and scrunched up my nose. I never would have gotten this tattoo willingly. There was a circle that was drawn on one end of a sword, and a spool of yarn was on the other end of the weapon. Each image was no larger than a quarter. What did all of this mean? What's next on the list? Zamire inquired. Next up, you and I are to be married. He was supposed to surrender you last month. I got impatient and decided to steal you myself, Shala explained. Pain flared in my body as blind anger came over me. I couldn't control what happened next. All my soul registered was that someone was trying to lay claim to what was mine. I got to my feet and let out a war cry. My body leapt forward and I went for Shala's throat. Her guards attempted to intercept me, but a wave of light exploded from my body, slamming into them. The scent of burning flesh reached my nose, but that didn't break through the haze of madness. Shala was going to pay for dreaming of calling Zamire her own. Jade, stop! An unfamiliar voice shouted. Before I could determine where the strange male voice was coming from, vapors smacked me in the face and I collapsed to the carpet, unconsciousness claiming me again. What in the hell are we supposed to do with her? Shala demanded. Strong arms held me close to a muscular body. My face was pressed against a heartbeat that meant everything to me. I lifted my head and stared into Zamire's concerned eyes. What happened? I groggily asked. You went ballistic. You injured 3 guards and nearly killed Shala. Someone sprayed knockout spray in your face and you dropped like a light. Jade, if you wanted to escape, that wasn't a great time to attempt it, Zamire said. I don't remember doing that, I confessed, horrified that I injured people. Your emotions were all over the place. The minute Shala talked about marrying me, you got so angry that something changed in you. Part of me wanted to deny that I cared that Shala had a claim to him, but the thought of her marrying Zamire caused madness to tickle my mind again. It's okay, Jade, Zamire said, his arms tightening around me. I have no idea what's going on with me. I recalled the moment I wanted to destroy Lady Anneli and her father. It was when Lord Rima told me that Zamire and Anneli's relationship was a love match. Footsteps reached us, and I rolled away from Zamire and got to my feet. A bruised Shala appeared with 3 guards at her back. She pointed a spear in my direction. The glowing tip told me that the weapon packed a terrible punch. So, the thought of me daring to marry your lover made you go insane? I can understand that. Our people admire strength. Had you just lain down and accepted your fate, I would have found you weak, she said, an evil smirk on her face. I considered apologizing, but had the sense that Shala would only throw my apology back in my face. So I figured that you can burn off some of your anger. What? I asked, fearing what was coming next. A Draugul is terrorizing one of my villages. I'm sending you out to kill it, she decided. Zamire got to his feet and stepped in front of me. She isn't facing off with a Draugul on her own, he protested. I know. You're going with her. Consider this your punishment for cheating on me. If you die, I'll force your father to breed with me. Shala threatened. Serves him right for allowing you to lay with the likes of her.
Something seemed off with this situation. I couldn't put my finger on what. And if we succeed? I demanded, stepping in front of Zamire. I had no idea how I was able to wield magic without a Heimdall crystal, but I would use it to my advantage. Shala laughed. A Draugul is 4 times your size and is carnivorous. It usually takes 20 Janton to defeat 1 Draugul. You have no chance against that beast. Was this your plan all along? I demanded, a sinking feeling causing my heart to crack. It was a possibility. But after your display, I decided that the lot of you are worthless. What if we survive? Will you let us go? I persisted with my line of questioning, trying to bargain with the evil princess. Shala smirked. If you happen to survive, which is impossible, I won't let you go. No, I'll send you to kill another beast. If you manage that, I'll continue sending you on missions, until you die. When I beam King Relics up to my ship, I'll tell him the news that his son died, all because he couldn't tell him the truth. I itched to blow Shala into pieces, but restrained myself. There had to be a way out of this mess. Are we on your ship? I asked. No, you're on Janton. After my men beamed you up to our ship, we kept you asleep for the 2-week journey to our planet, she callously explained. 2 weeks? We'd been away from Neretha for quite a while. How in the world will we be able to return? I eyed Zamire, whose expression was blank. He obviously didn't want to give Shala the satisfaction of seeing the hopelessness in his eyes. I had no such training, and Shala loved the emotions on my face. That's right, pathetic Nerethian. You're never going home. Something about this situation caused warning alarms to fill my head. Until I attacked her, Shala had been hell-bent on receiving genetic material from Zamire. Now she was willing to toss Zamire to the side and capture the king? I wanted to beg her to tell the truth, but I knew that the princess wasn't going to reveal anything. I eyed Zamire, who was still blank-faced, but his assessing gaze told me that he also saw that something wasn't adding up. We aren't going to get fed first? Zamire suddenly asked. Shala shook her head. You can hunt for your own food, spoiled prince. I wonder if you'll be able to skin and cook game. Zamire sighed. Let us leave, then. There is no point in wasting our time speaking to you. Fine. Follow me. I'd like to see your lover figure out how to keep your feet warm. She laughed. I groaned, knowing that the powers I possessed needed some refueling. Shala led us out of the room and into a cavernous hallway. We walked up a winding staircase that went on for 20 flights. By the time we reached the top, my sides were aching from the exertion. 2 7.5-foot-tall men, dressed in clothing covered in fur, were waiting for us. Neither of them spoke. The princess's joyous demeanor didn't match the situation. Why capture someone for their genetic material, only to send them into a dangerous battle? We were being tricked. I could feel it. Jade, any last words? The princess asked. I pulled Zamire into my arms and held him close. I went up on tiptoe and kissed his soft lips. After a moment of hesitation, he held me close, his tongue entering my mouth. When we pulled apart, I made eye contact with him. See you soon, I said. Then everything went black. Chapter 8. Lena. Rebel Base. Lena? You awake? My sister Molly asked. I tentatively opened my eyes, waiting for the pain to hit me. But Leah was right. The removal of my tracker had no physical effects. I sat up and let out a yawn. We were both in the infirmary, me sitting on one of the thin cots. Where's everyone? In the cafeteria, trying to eat one of the horrid meals. You've been asleep for a day, but Charles told us that the scans said you were fine. I guess it took a while for your body to adapt to you not having a tracker. You woke up just in time for this.
Molly picked up a cup from the side table and handed it to me. What is it?
The drink that breaks down our hydral crystal. It tastes like grape juice.
I drank it down, desperate to start the process of ridding my body of the crystal. As soon as I took the last sip, pain tore through my body. I let out a shriek when what felt like acid slammed against my spine. I couldn't see a thing through my fading vision.
Help!
Molly shouted. I kept on screaming, unable to tolerate the sensation of my bones feeling like they were eroding. I tried to breathe through the pain, like I would during a light punishment, but the tactic failed. Besides, a light punishment was for a couple of minutes. This agony felt like it was going to torture me for eternity. A hand brushed my forehead, which sent me into a vision. I was standing on the roof of Emperor Tulda's castle. I recognized it from past visions of the madman leading shackled prisoners to this very spot. After delivering the typical, "I'm emperor and you disappointed me" kind of monologue, he sent his prisoners for their final flight. That's exactly what he called tossing people off the roof. I looked around and spotted Jade, standing there in a robe. Prince Zamire stood beside her, which was confusing. I next took in the princess and 2 Janton guards.
Jade, any last words?
Princess Shala asked. Her question shot fear through me, but my twin was more focused on her hormones. She pulled Prince Zamire into her arms and kissed him. The prince stiffened for a moment before kissing my sister back with enthusiasm. Hate filled the princess's eyes, which was surprising. Why would she care about the prince kissing someone else? What happened to Lady and Ellie? I thought that Prince Zamire and Lord Rima's daughter were unofficially betrothed. Eventually, the couple pulled apart and gazed into each other's eyes.
See you soon,
Jade told him. One of the guards sneaked up behind a distracted Jade and jabbed her in the neck with a long, cylinder-shaped metallic device. My twin collapsed and the prince moved to catch her, but the other soldier restrained him.
Don't bother, Zamire.
She isn't dead, Princess Shala snapped. I thought you'd give us an honest shot of beating the Draugul, the prince hotly said. Princess Shala grinned.
You aren't going with her, Zamire.
I lied.
I only fed you that story because you would have fought me otherwise. Now that your lover is knocked out, you won't chance it.
A flyer suddenly uncloaked and its side vanished. Zamire attempted to run to Jade, but the second guard pinned him to the roof. The princess watched as Jade was carried on board the flyer. The first guard stepped out of the flyer. Its side reappeared, and it flew away. The guard restraining the prince stood and stepped back. Prince Zamire got to his feet and eyed the edge of the roof. A calculating expression crossed his face, but then he shook his head. That wasn't necessary, he told the princess.
It was. Now you know that I won't accept a man with a wandering eye. If you decide to take another lover, I'll drag her up here in chains and send her for her final flight. At least Jade will have the privilege of fighting a Draugul. She'll die with honor.
She'll survive. The Nerethian prince's confidence in Jade annoyed the Princess of Janton.
Say another word about this, and I'll force her to fight 2 Drauguls.
The prince clenched his fists. Understood. Emperor Tulda stormed onto the roof, followed by a tall, slender female with pale blonde hair. Something was different about the Emperor. He still had his long, braided black hair, tall, muscular build, and his fur-covered clothing, but black aviator shades concealed his eyes, which was odd. Shala! What's the meaning of this? The Emperor demanded. The princess turned to face her brother.
I was just telling Prince Zamire that if he takes another lover, I'll send her for her final flight.
I was waiting for approval to fill the Emperor's face. He often praised ruthlessness. Shala, did you dispose of the female specimen?
Specimen? Tulda, are you feeling all right? The princess asked.
Right. The female prisoner. Did you dispose of her?
She's about to battle a Draugul.
Her odds of winning are slim. So you did dispose of her. What a waste of genetic material. I forbid you from doing so again, the Emperor said. No one is to die needlessly.
Tulda, I will do what I want with my prisoners. I will...
Tulda lifted his sister without breaking a sweat and dangled her over open air. You will obey me. When I tell you something, you will listen. If you're a liability, you'll be broken down for parts. Understand me? Princess Shala's eyes were wide with fear, her hands trying to grasp his arms, but she couldn't reach.
Let me down, Tulda, the princess demanded.
Not until you recognize that I'm the Emperor and you're nothing more than a sack of bones. You don't make the decisions around here. I do.
I will kill you for this, Tulda, she hissed.
Tulda dropped her, and the princess shrieked. At the last moment, she managed to cling to the side of the castle with both hands. I'll kick your arms until you let go, unless you accept my rule.
I accept, the princess said.
Moments later, the Emperor lifted her into his arms and tossed her on the roof. She sat up and slowly got to her feet. You will treat the prisoner with dignity. Get him dressed and fed. If I find out that he has been tortured, I will kill you. The princess nodded and turned to Prince Zamire.
Come with me. I will provide you clothing and food.
Zamire nodded and followed the princess into the castle. Emperor Tulda rubbed his forehead. He opened his mouth, but whatever he said was lost to me. I was sent flying into another vision. I was in a frigid room with a metal table where Lady Anneli rested. She was the woman who had sat beside Jade during the tournament. I saw her conspire with Lady Valera in a brief vision. She lay on the table, her filthy blonde hair hanging loose. She sat up when Lord Rima walked into the room, followed by a weary King Relix. King Relix was tall, thin, with graying black hair and a thick beard. His thin lips tightened when he saw Lady Anneli. Where is my son? King Relix demanded. The lady stiffened.
I don't know. Maybe he's in that commoner's bed.
Anneli, just be honest with our king. He vowed to spare your life if you tell him everything. The king looked like he would object, but Anneli replied before he could say a word.
I was approached by Lord Pe'urk after the disastrous auction. He wanted to know if I wanted to punish the prince for my humiliation. I agreed. He provided me with a device. Once the prince was near, I was to turn it on. I didn't know what it did. I just turned on the device and nothing happened at first. Then someone beamed him and that horrid woman to their ship.
Lord Rima paled. I had no part in this. I had no idea. She's a female in your house, Lord Rima. She is your only heir. Her shame will come down on you. You will... Lord Rima tapped on the wall and a mechanical arm fell from the ceiling and decapitated his own child. I have no heir. I will take a woman in my harem to wife. I'm not sure what you want to do with Lord Pe'urk. I suggest you move carefully, since he has so many females. King Relix nodded. You killed your female. You were going to strip me of my title. I couldn't disgrace my family legacy in that way. I want you to keep things quiet, Lord Rima. Don't tell Lord Pe'urk I'm on to him. I won't, my king. You have my vow.
Chapter 9. Gwen. Naretha. The Pe'urk estate. I sat up when Lord Pe'urk entered the room, followed by a horrified-looking Yvette. Her eyes widened upon seeing her son lying in the other bed. 2 days I had been stuck down in the damn dungeon, waiting for the monster to taunt me some more. The cleaning bots had long since cleaned up all evidence of Claire's death, but I could still see the fear in her eyes, just before her head hit the floor. She haunted my nightmares, the guilt nearly killing me. I knew how much it would cost me to kill Lady Valera, and I had done it anyway. Christian entered my mind, his warm presence giving me refuge from my thoughts, some strength.
Be strong, Gwen,
he said, his encouragement making me stiffen, my body preparing for the worst. Unlike Lex, I was given complete movement of my body. My imprisonment was a mental kind, something that grated on my nerves. If I so much as blinked wrong, Yvette would be the one without a head. Lex eyed his mother with concern. Mom, Lex whispered. Yvette ran over to her son, her hand caressing his cheek. What has he done, Manor? The woman asked, a tear trickling down her face.
Lex decided to spy for my recently departed wife. Now that she's no longer here to protect him, I decided to teach him a lesson. Be careful who you place your allegiance with, Lord Pe'urk replied.
Please don't hurt him, Manor. I'll do anything, she pleaded. Dad smirked, his eyes filled with cunning.
Anything?
He asked, his question making me shudder. If Yvette was anything like my mother, she despised going to Lord Pe'urk's bed.
No need, Yvette. You're here as a stand-in,
my evil father replied. A stand-in? Yvette questioned.
You see, Gwen murdered my wife. Since her mother is off with the Janton, I can't punish Gwen by hurting her. But you will do, Lord Pe'urk replied.
Moments later, a light punishment dropped down, and it slammed against my body. I shrieked, the pain traveling through my body like a wildfire.
If you destroy the light punishment, Yvette loses her head,
Lord Pe'urk taunted. I continued screaming, the pain only growing in intensity. Christian slipped into my mind, his presence not doing anything to dull the torture.
Go to sleep, my Gwen,
he whispered, and I followed his command. I slowly opened my eyes, sweat causing the foul-smelling gown to cling to my skin. I sat up and yawned. Ugh, the inside of my mouth tasted disgusting. Lex was still in the other bed, a bruise marking his cheekbone. What happened? I rasped out. Lex blinked his brown eyes open and let out a breath.
After you passed out from the pain, he took my mother to bed,
he explained. Guilt momentarily popped into my heart. Killing Lady Valera was costing everyone such a heavy price. If only I could turn back time and cool my temper. When is Lord Pe'urk coming back? I asked. Lex rolled his eyes.
Women. So impatient and hysterical. He'll come when he's good and ready, so shut up.
Why are you such an ass, Lex? He seemed taken aback by my question, and I couldn't blame him. In the past, I was cautious, polite, and barely made a fuss. I was a master at playing the game. When Lord Pe'urk took my mother from me, something broke in me. I no longer wanted to act like the dutiful daughter. I couldn't take my anger out on Lord Pe'urk, so Lex would do.
Why are you such a goody two-shoes?
Lex taunted. Because I'm trying to survive. You have no reason to act the way you do. You have been horrible to everyone. Yes, I was being irrational, but why not?
My Gwen, you should try to work with Lex, not antagonize him,
Christian said, his presence in my head cooling my temper. I'm going to go mad if I stay here, I mentally told him. I need to get out of here before Lord Pe'Urk kills someone else.
No, my Gwen. If you escape now, your father will probably kill Yvette. What you need to do is be patient,
the stranger in my head urged. Patient? For what? I demanded.
For the perfect opportunity to kill Lord Pe'Urk. I'm confident that his son Obi isn't as cruel as him,
Christian replied. You want me to kill Lord Pe'Urk? I asked, so shocked that I actually spoke out loud. Lex shot me a confused expression.
Gwen, who are you talking to?
Lex demanded. Nope. Christian was my little secret. If I clued Lex in, he would only tell Lord Pe'Urk. I was about to offer a denial, but thought better of it. I was just daydreaming, I lied. Lex snorted.
You're talking to someone.
Who? I could tell by the hunger in his eyes that Lex craved the information. This was his opportunity to bargain with my father. But I wouldn't sell Christian out. He had done nothing but protect and guide me. Honest, I replied.
Yes, Gwen. You must kill Lord Pe'Urk. Then you can set me free,
Christian told me. I managed to think my next thought at the telepath. Set you free? I asked, confused. Where are you?
In the heart of Neretha.
I didn't have a map handy, so the information wasn't helpful. Who is holding you captive? I asked, hoping that he would give me an answer.
Who isn't holding me captive would be the better question, my Gwen, Christian said.
Ugh, it was obvious that the man was evading my answers because he couldn't quite trust me yet. Despite the flare of pain that hurt my heart, I understood his reasoning well. Once upon a time, I was exactly like Lex, snitching on my siblings, eager to keep my mother safe. But now that she was gone, I was hungry to escape.
It's not that I don't want to trust you, Gwen. I just don't think you're ready for the truth,
Christian explained. Ready for the truth? What do you mean by that? I questioned. I was disappointed when Christian's warm presence left my head. I groaned when Father entered the room, followed by an odd-looking guy. I shouldn't have been surprised, since a lot of alien races differed in appearance. But this particular alien was tall, with gold skin, fine facial features, long black hair, and thin, 2-foot-high horns protruding from his skull. When his blue eyes took in the room, excitement filled his face. Great. Was this guy another victim of Lord Pe'Urk's cruel games? He obviously didn't understand what the purpose of a dungeon was if he was intrigued. My captor grinned from ear to ear, as if getting the stranger into the dungeon was his ultimate goal. I glanced at Lex, who had an unimpressed expression on his face. I could tell that something rude was about to come out of Lex's mouth when he sneered.
The zoo is in the room next door,
Lex muttered. Predictably, a punishment beam slammed into Lex's body, a cry of pain escaping his lips. I felt no pity for my brother, since he incited my father.
Stop that! You'll damage the specimen,
the stranger with the horns said in accented English. Specimen? What was this alien's purpose for being in the dungeon? Lord Pe'Urk sighed and snapped his fingers. Lex relaxed, the tightness fading from his face. Sweat dotted his forehead, his eyes radiating hatred. It was obvious that captivity was beginning to fray at Lex's already small mind. Couldn't he just control his impulse to insult people? What if Father decided to shove Yvette into the room and order her execution?
Perfect. I'm interested in the male. It's rather difficult to capture human specimens, the stranger explained.
There went that word again.
Have at him. He has no powers, so do what you wish. Lex here is disposable,
Lord Pe'Urk replied.
And your harem? The stranger inquired. Are there any women I can work on?
Cruelty filled my father's features moments before he spoke.
Take Yvette and Anna, Neither women are of any use to me.
I'll kill you, you disgusting bastard! Just wait until I get my hands on you, Lex shouted, struggling against the restraints. The horned alien walked over to the thrashing Lex and pressed a fingertip to his forehead. My half-brother stiffened before going limp. Chapter 10. Gwen. Neretha. The Pe'erk Estate. I stared at my motionless half-brother, wondering what my father had in store for us. What was this stranger doing in the dungeon? He referred to Lex as a specimen. What in the galaxies was Manor Pe'erk up to?
Are you going to behave, young lady? The stranger demanded. How in the hell was I supposed to respond to that question? Was he going to slice me open and study my organs? No matter how passive I could be at times, even I wouldn't sit there and allow someone to break me apart piece by piece. I eyed Lex and forced myself to comply. I didn't want the alien to knock me out. Yes, sir, I said, hoping that acting amenable would spare me from the horror of being knocked out. I needed to know what this alien wanted with me.
Gwen is the one I told you about, with the raw power. She has an innate gift that we can use.
The excitement in Father's eyes made me want to throw up. It sounded like Lord Pe'erk was going to give me a chance to earn favor with him again, but I didn't want it. The memory of my dead-eyed mother wearing a collar told me that he only meant me harm. But could I kill Lord Pe'erk? Sometimes I felt like blasting him into oblivion would be simple enough, but something held me back from actually attempting it. What if he killed another member of his harem to punish me if I failed? I didn't think I could live through something like that again.
Anna and Yvette should be joining us at any moment,
Lord Pe'erk announced.
Good. It's a dreadfully long trip to my lab,
the stranger replied. Lab? The door opened and Anna and Yvette entered the room, both of them clad in the uniform of the human women taken from Earth. While Yvette's face filled with worry upon seeing her son unconscious, Anna fidgeted with her dress. She was always the nervous sort.
Gwen, I want you to stand and leave this room, without a fuss,
Lord Pe'erk ordered. I slid out of the bed and leaned on the table, my legs unable to hold my weight. The alien stranger scowled.
Manor, you need to learn to treat our test subjects with more care. Look at them. They are all weak, tired, and underfed.
My father paled when the alien's face reddened, his eyes beginning to glow.
Prince Ellerin, I'm so sorry. You see, Gwen was being disciplined and... I'll forgive your mistake once, but if you ever give me specimens this pathetic again, there will be hell to pay,
Prince Ellerin growled, his teeth bared. He waved his arm and Lex suddenly rose into the air. The door opened and Lex shot out of it. Prince Ellerin followed my half-brother, Yvette staying close to the creepy alien. I eyed Anna and fought the instinct to blast Prince Ellerin's head off to keep her from suffering. Out of all the mothers that had traveled on the Pe'erk's triumph with my siblings and me, Anna had been warm to everyone. Like David, she genuinely cared for others. But I was powerless. My reserves were sucked out by the dungeon. Instead, I looped my arm through hers and we left the dungeon and the Pe'erk estate behind. Prince Ellerin's flyer was black. That signified that he didn't march under the banner of a lord during war times. I was the last to enter the flyer, which was so cold that my teeth chattered. When the door closed, the prince rang a bell, and the pilot took to the air. I was the unlucky one to be seated beside the eccentric alien. He studied me with hungry eyes. The hunger was probably for the chance to get a hold of my genetic material, but that didn't make the gaze less daunting.
Gwen, since we have hours to kill, I'd like to ask you a few questions,
Prince Ellerin said, a tablet suddenly appearing in his grip.
Okay,
I rasped out. He scowled.
Listen to that scratchy voice. I'm sure Lord Pe'erk tortured you plenty, which is unacceptable. He has no idea how difficult it is to come by human cargo. Earth's defensives are nearly airtight. I had a lead on the Kigor port, but it blew up. So much wasted life. Part of me wants to inflict the same torture on that foolish man. But I may need him later. Let's get on with things. How regular are your menstrual cycles?
He was expecting me to answer the question in front of Anna and Yvette? What if Lex woke up from his nap? He was currently in the seat behind me, so I had no way of knowing. Regular? Every month? I quickly replied, forcing the embarrassment away. I'd talk about my favorite products to use if it kept me safe. I needed to survive in order to determine the best possible way to rescue my mother from the Janton.
Interesting. Nerathian women only menstruate every other month. Any pain, discomfort, cravings?
He demanded. I answered his questions truthfully, desperately hoping that it would get him to talk about something else.
Have you entertained men?
No, I said, the memory of Christian's warm mind making my heart rate increase.
Focus, Gwen. You can't let on that you are in communication with another one of Lord Pe'erk's prisoners. When did your destructive light power manifest?
I told Prince Ellerin everything, satisfaction filling me when he scowled.
He punished you because you attempted to save your mother. Why not allow you to attack, to see how far your powers could go?
He demanded.
I'd kill Lord Pe'erk if it wasn't for his wealth of genetic material.
Too bad. Killing him would have solved a lot of my problems. For what purpose? I dared to ask. Prince Ellerin smirked at me.
Don't you worry about my reasons now, Gwen. You'll learn once you can be trusted.
I shuddered at the thought of being in this madman's inner circle. I knew what it cost to be loyal to a psychopath and didn't think that I could pay that price again. But I kept my mouth shut, not wanting the deranged prince to know how I felt about the prospect of earning his favor. Favor. That's all it would ever be. People like my father dangled trust in front of someone, like it could actually be earned. In the meantime, the people subservient to them groveled for any bit of favor they could get. The cycle would never end. I knew it was sick, but in my father's case, I hadn't wanted it to end. At least while Mom was in the harem, I had a guarantee that my actions would keep her safe.
What useless destruction,
the prince said, drawing me from my thoughts. I glanced out the window and saw a blackened plot of land with the remains of a structure in the center. The war with the Janton was brutal, I commented.
Emperor Tulda fights for the sake of fighting. He's not fit to be a ruler,
the prince hissed.
I think that chaos will get him first.
Chaos? What in the world was this scientist talking about? Maybe it was as simple as watching Emperor Tulda's people begin rebelling. What else could it mean? And most importantly, why should it matter to me? I was stuck in a flyer with a man that hungered to study me. It wasn't like I could do anything about it. I could barely manage to keep myself out of trouble. And so much for killing Lord Pe'erk to gain Christian's freedom, not that I could really get the nerve to do something that risky. What do you need my powers for? I asked instead, trying to ferret out his reason for taking me. Prince Ellerin shot me a soft smile.
I like you, Gwen Pe'erk. I think we could be great friends.
What the hell? I'd never actually be this monster's friend. But I kept my expression neutral. Thank you, sir. That's kind. He waved my words away.
I don't want you to kiss up to me. I need you to tell me the truth. Forget the groveling that your father taught you and be yourself.
Be myself? I had no clue who that was. For my entire life, I was whatever father wanted me to be.
And now this guy thought that I could drop the cloak that blocked my personality from shining through and be myself? It saddened me to admit, but without direction, I was nothing.
Chapter 11. Sheena. Naretha's Atmosphere. I stood in the doorway of my bedroom, watching Amber sleep. What in the hell was I supposed to tell her? Hi, Amber. Your stepsister is evil as hell and kidnapped Jade? Yeah, that would go over well. Derek's hand rested on my shoulder, sending heat through me.
Gwen was coerced into kidnapping Jade,
he told me. Yeah, like that made the situation better. I was on this stupid quest to save someone thanks to Gwen. I don't care. Gwen took my best friend away from me.
I know, sweetheart. But you can't go in there and tell Amber that her stepsister kidnapped her friend. She's been through enough.
Want me to lie to her? I challenged.
No. I want you to present the facts without coloring them with your emotions. Amber cares for you. She'll be pissed at Gwen on your behalf if she thinks that you're angry at her.
At that moment, I wanted to tell Derek to take his logic and toss it into outer space. I had no desire to sympathize with the person that took Jade from everything she knew. She killed Jade's parents, I softly said.
No,
Rose cried.
My daughter isn't a murderer. That was Lex's doing.
I spun to face Rose, shock and horror mingling in my heart.
Lex. I had a vision of him. He was the one who beheaded Max, I said.
Rose covered her face, her shoulders suddenly shaking with sobs. Crap. The poor woman had no clue who her husband's murderer was. Great. Wasn't this the day for revelations? Derek eyed me with concern, which didn't make sense until he wrapped his arms around the sobbing woman. He was worried that I would become possessive. But I just watched as Derek comforted the night, my heart actually melting a bit. Most guys I knew would have expected me to do the comforting, but I didn't have it in me. Rose was to blame for dragging Max Garcia into this mess. No amount of rationalizing was going to convince me to feel differently. A hand rested on my shoulder, and I turned to see a bleary-eyed Amber standing there. "What's up, Sheena?" she asked, her eyes taking in the heartbreaking scene. "Why didn't you tell me the consequences of refusing a match made by the guild?" I asked. Amber shot me with a "girl, please" expression. "So you're acknowledging that you're a caster now?" Amber asked, confused. "I'm sorry. I don't agree with covens, especially if they forcefully match people," I complained. Amber nodded. "If we choose to be with people with no caster blood, we could be excommunicated from the coven. Celeste is especially strict, since she booted her own sister out of the coven. But we couldn't convince you to join the coven. Why would we have explained the coven's rules?" "I don't get it. How are you okay with a snooty group telling you who to marry?" Why was I fighting this? I needed to tell Amber about Gwen and Lex. "Because I don't know any differently," Amber replied. "Let's drop the dating rules thing for now. What's going on?" Well, damn, I'll give it to you straight. Gwen kidnapped Jade," I blurted out. Amber's mouth fell open, her eyes going wide. "Wait, why did Gwen kidnap Jade?" my friend asked. "Because Lord Pe'erk ordered it," Mira said. I squeaked, surprised to find her beside me. Mira wore a pair of leggings and a t-shirt, her dark hair up in a bun. She looked tired. The battle with the Janton obviously was taking a toll on her. Lord Pe'erk has the nasty habit of using his children's mothers against them. Gwen had no choice but to agree. "I don't care," I hissed. "She took Jade without a thought. She could have refused." "Yeah, and Rose probably would have lost her head," Amber flatly said. "Look, Sheena, I get that you're upset, but Gwen didn't have a choice. Don't worry, we're going to get Jade back.
Before we get Jade back, we need to return the humans to Earth. Anyone check on Angelo? Mira wanted to know.
Why do you ask? Did something happen to him? I snapped, irritation momentarily taking over my good sense. How in the hell did no one see my point of view? Jade was plucked out of her life only to be dropped into a galactic harem. Who knew what was happening to her? No. All I feel is anger coming from him, Mira said. Now tone down the attitude. Oh, hell no. That broad didn't just tell me to cool down. You know, I could have just let that Janton kill you, right? I spat out. You could have, but you didn't. It's obvious that you're in no mood to focus on the mission, so I'm going back to my room, Mira said. I was about to charge the soulmate-stealing hussy when Angelo teleported in front of me, his eyes filled with worry. He held out his hand to me, and I took it, his touch sending me into a vision of the not-so-distant past. I found myself in an office space with 2 rows of cubicles on one side, and an area that consisted of 2 round tables, a counter that held a coffee machine, a box of donuts, and a couple of canisters filled with sugar. There were cabinets above the countertop. One of the doors was open, allowing me to see a row of mugs. The unfamiliar room only held Rayon, the Najorian king. He sat at one of the round tables, dressed in black pajamas. A large mug of coffee rested beside his left hand. Rayon glared up at the flat screen that hung on the wall. He muttered a curse when a soft chime emanated from the tablet in front of him. He jabbed at the screen, and the flat screen was suddenly filled with a face that I didn't want to see again. Emperor Tulda of the Janton Empire scowled at Rayon. He wore sunglasses to conceal what were probably bloodshot eyes.
Well, Ray, tell me why one of your citizens was seen on the Keyboard port before it exploded. Angelo Daiger doesn't have enough power to destroy a port, nor is it in his character to. As far as I can tell, it looks like he was trying to escape, like the rest of the people on the port. I don't care. I want him questioned. Summon him,
the Emperor demanded.
You and I both know that he could be anywhere,
Rayon shot back.
Who were the others with him?
The Emperor asked.
I only recognized one person, Winston Palgrave. He's a merchant's son,
Rayon lied.
I think the rest of the group are probably Nerethians. I think you're right, though King Relics didn't recognize any of the people with your men. Nerethians are notorious for keeping terrible records. Do we have a deal, Rayon? You'll turn Angelo Daiger and Winston Palgrave over to me when you track them down? I will. I'll send my best tracker on the job,
King Rayon assured.
Good,
Emperor Tulda said before his image vanished. Nicole appeared beside Rayon, a scowl on her face. Are you really going to send men to track down Winston and Angelo? She asked, concern on her face.
Goodness, no. Angelo and Winston will come to me. I'll simply arrest their parents and keep them in the detention center for the soulsick. Then I'll send Derek a message. Either those 2 return, or their parents will suffer the consequences.
Rayon, you can't do that. You know Winston and Angelo are innocent, Nicole pleaded.
Emperor Tulda is a madman, and that psycho sister of his is no better. If I don't turn them over, he'll probably attack one of the Najorian villages, he said.
Nicole let out a breath. If you insist on bowing to the whims of a mad emperor, I can't stop you. At least give Winston and Angelo the chance to turn themselves in. They will do the right thing.
They won't. Whatever quest they're on is important. There is no other reason why Derek would take a leave of absence. Angelo and Winston are much too loyal to abandon their friends.
Can I change your mind, Ray? Nicole asked.
No. You can't. We have the Najorians on Janton to think of, he said.
Okay, I'll summon soldiers to make the arrests, Nicole reluctantly said before vanishing. Can I ever see something pleasant? I complained after pulling away from Angelo. It's all death, threat of death, and now arrests. What the hell? I was being dramatic, but couldn't help it.
What did you see?
Angelo, who had been a wonderful, supportive friend, was in danger of being executed. Oh, crap. Why did I have to be the bearer of bad news? I wanted to blurt it out, but Derek spoke first.
Let's all sit down,
he insisted. Without question, everyone shuffled into the kitchen area and took a seat at the table, even the sniffling Rose. I wished that the woman would go to the moon and kick rocks, crystals, or whatever was found on Naretha's moon. But nope, she was here, intruding on my group. There was a slight shake to the floor as someone approached. Great. The mighty Janton warrior was standing there, in his dust-covered clothes.
Food?
He asked in Janton. Not yet. I have bad news to break to everyone, I replied in his language. He nodded and sat on the floor beside Amber's chair.
Good morning, little warrior,
he greeted in accented English. What in the hell is your name? I asked.
Cordell,
he replied. Tell us what's up, Sheena, Amber encouraged. I had another vision about King Rayon. I spilled every detail, even the color of the damn mugs in the cabinets. I didn't want to leave anything out in case Angelo and Winston could use something to their advantage. Winston let out a curse.
I'll go. It isn't like any of you need me. Angelo can fly the ship. Our families shouldn't have to suffer.
Amber held up her glowing hands. No one is going anywhere. Not until we figure out what Emperor Tulda will do to them.
They have our families. We can't just stay here,
Winston argued. What if we can break out your families? Amber tossed out. What are the soul sick?
The Najorian that have gone mad from not finding their soulmates,
Angelo replied.
They're held in a secure detention center that is made out of blick tar to weaken them.
So, we're talking a lot of guards? Amber asked, a calculating gleam in her brown eyes.
We're talking impenetrable,
Derek replied. Now what? I asked, worry making me nauseous.
We go to Janton,
Cordell announced, excitement lighting his eyes. Chapter 12. Sheena. Naretha's atmosphere.
No! Winston is not going to Janton!
Amber shouted, the glow in her hands intensifying.
He's keeping his happy little ass on this ship! Amber, you have no clue what the detention center is like. It's a hellhole in there. I need to go,
Winston fired back.
And what about us, Win? What about the mission? What about me? Are you prepared to walk away? Just like that?
Amber shouted. I was either self-centered or Winston and Amber hid it well. I had no clue that they had a thing. All of the non-mind readers in the room, aside from the secret couple, were equally confused.
Little warrior, is he yours?
Cordell asked, gesturing at Winston, a look of surprise on his face. Let's not get into their relationship, Rose interrupted. We need to focus on the obvious. We have to wait until Derek receives a communication from the king. Winston can't hand himself over if he isn't supposed to know, Rose argued. That's it, I realized. Winston, can't you and Angelo warn your parents and stash them somewhere?
Communications among the civilians are heavily guarded,
Angelo replied.
If I send them a warning, it could either be intercepted or someone loyal to King Rayon could prevent their escape.
And all of it goes back to what I said. We aren't supposed to have the information. Winston and Angelo can't turn themselves in just yet. Because you're worried that the aliens will figure out that I'm an oracle, I guessed. When Rose nodded, annoyance surged within me. It wasn't like the king will think, "Yup, an oracle must be aboard the ship," if Angelo and Winston turned themselves in. "They won't," Mira said, answering my inner thoughts. "King Rayon might think that a spy is in his court. Then an innocent person will be punished for his assumption." Damn! I hated when the woman made such a wonderful point. Shouldn't she suck at something? "Excuse me," a feminine voice said. I stood and turned to see one of the humans that we rescued. She was the one that Chordal was trying to buy. She wore an oversized t-shirt, shorts, and socks. Her raven hair was washed and pulled up in a ponytail. Her dark eyes were wide with horror. "How much of this conversation did you overhear?" I demanded. She sighed. "All of it. You promised that you would bring us home." Angelo got to his feet and shoved his hair out of his face. "Two at a time. Let's get this over with." "Wait a second," Rose cut in. "You're going to drop random humans that we rescued back on Earth without working out a cover story? Earth isn't ready to know about the existence of aliens or casters." Why did we rescue Lady Negativity? Every time someone had an idea, she was there to strike it down. Winston gestured at Derek.
He could wipe her mind of all she heard and saw.
"I don't think so," the human said, her hands held up in front of her. "I want all of my memories." "For what purpose?" I asked, wishing that I could understand her.
"Love. She's an astronaut. She's naturally curious, and part of her job is to collect data about space. She wants to tell her superiors,"
Derek pointed out. "Look, what's your name?" "Mia Lockhart," she replied, shooting me a suspicious expression. "Mia, we can't let you go with all of your memories intact. The casters aren't ready to be poked and prodded by scientists," I calmly said. "Aren't you grateful to be rescued? Out of gratitude, can you just..." "What? Shut up and accept what happened? You do know that humans are being plucked from Earth and are being sold to a psychoscientist, right? There used to be more humans in the cages, but 3 men deemed them healthy enough for the prince's experiments and bought them," Mia said, her hard eyes boring into mine. "I talked to one of the humans. I think her name is Brianna Hudson. She was surfing on the beach when some psycho knocked her out and took her into space. If you don't believe me, you can look her up. She is a missing person. I remembered seeing her case being covered on the news before I went into space." I know I was being selfish, but I groaned. "Damn. Amber, you aren't going to ignore this, are you?" I asked, shooting a hopeful expression in Amber's direction. The disappointment on Amber's face made me realize that I misspoke. "Look around you, Sheena. Most of these people don't even know Jade, but they were willing to help you rescue her. Let me guess. Because Brianna Hudson isn't our friend, you don't see fit to rescue her? Is that it?" Amber calmly inquired. "Casters never leave an innocent behind. That's the creed we live by. Stop being self-centered and accept the fact that you have a higher purpose." Amber left the table, and moments later, I heard a door slam. "I'm not self-centered! I just don't want to be the hero! Did anyone ask me before I got these powers?" I shouted. Mia shot me a look of understanding. "You're young. I get that. But your friend is right," she gently told me. "Now, who's bringing me home?" I eyed Derek, who rubbed his face.
"Mia, you can't talk. The king would only have you captured and force you to live out your days in one of the Najorian villages. And trust me, you won't be lucky enough to end up on Earth," Derek pleaded. "Humans are being kidnapped.
You don't understand. During my captivity, I saw 24 humans being sold off. You need to do something, she pleaded. Derek stood and walked over to Mia.
We'll find Brianna Hudson, I promise, he said, before his hands cradled Mia's head. She couldn't even fight what he was doing. Her body went rigid, and moments later, she stumbled back from him, an empty expression on her face. Angelo, bring in the next person, Derek said. One by one, Angelo teleported the humans into the room and Derek brainwashed them. It took 3 trips, but the humans were finally back on Earth. After Angelo returned for the last time, he let out a breath. Why do I feel like such a tool? He asked us. We all do, Mira chimed in. But it had to be done. And like Derek said, we'll try to find Brianna Hudson, if she's still alive. I wanted to be hard and unyielding about the decision that was made, but part of me couldn't help but call myself a hypocrite. I bristled at choices, destiny, fate, or anything else that controlled my options. And yet, I allowed Derek to strip these people of their memories. Why don't we get some rest? Rose said. I think that this has been a long, emotional day for everyone. Since when did the reason for Max's death become our leader? And how in the hell was I going to face Amber? She was rightly pissed off and thought that I was selfish. Sheena, follow me, Derek said. I took the bait, following Derek to his bedroom, not even complaining when he pulled the door closed behind me. He gestured to the bed. What? I asked, confused. Lie down. Let me hold you, he said, his green eyes boring into mine. I wanted to fight Derek, but I was emotionally exhausted and was starting to have a massive headache. I sighed and got into bed, Derek joining me, then pulling the comforter over us. His closeness caused peace to slip into me. I relaxed, allowing myself to enjoy it when he shifted onto his side and pulled me into his arms. I took deep breaths, trying to calm myself down. You think I'm selfish? I asked, as his fingers began stroking my hair. No, I just think you're confused. It isn't easy giving up your dreams to walk a dangerous path, Derek acknowledged. Amber doesn't get it. She was born into this caster thing and was raised with her coven. All I ever had was Jade and the knowledge that I'd be on Broadway someday. And now I have neither, I said. Derek's hands began stroking my back. You could have everything if you allowed yourself to, he softly told me. My brain hurt, and I wasn't about to think any harder. Instead, I snuggled into the soulmate I wasn't sure I wanted and allowed my eyes to drift closed. I fell into a peaceful sleep, my dreams filled with joy and passion. Chapter 13. Jade, Janton, Ishmar Village. The wind attacking the soles of my feet forced my eyes open. I groaned and tried to move, but my muscles took forever to comply. What had Princess Shala knocked me out with? Why did she bother doing something so drastic? It wasn't like I was planning on disobeying her. The princess's people dropped me off on a mound of snow. My feet screamed from making continuous contact with the snow. It took me a moment for me to remember that I needed to charm them. I quickly summoned my power and slammed it into my feet before looking around to see no one in sight. Oh crap, Zamire hadn't come with me. I vaguely realized that we were duped into believing that we would kill the drow ghoul together. This was great. My ears picked up on an ear-piercing shriek. At least I know where to find the drow ghoul, I thought to myself. There wasn't a house in sight. It looked like I would have to run into battle. The princess was obviously trying to make things as difficult for me as possible. Great. I ran toward the shrieking, trying to think of what I could really do against the beast.
I didn't have a weapon, and none was conveniently left for me. That crazy princess probably expected me to fight the creature with my bare hands. I could ask a villager for a weapon, not that it would do me much good. Jantons were taller and stronger than humans. I doubt that I could wield anything they gave me. The screaming I heard abruptly cut off, causing panic to fill my chest. Oh crap! I was too late! I pushed myself even harder, trying to reach the terrified person. I mentally cursed Shala for punishing these people for my existence. Why in the hell had Zamire kissed me? If he hadn't, would Ishmar village have received assistance from Shala's warriors? Run! A man roared from up ahead. That didn't sound good. I was definitely unhappy with the fact that I was running toward the danger. As I grew closer to the screams, my entire being filled with warning. The ground abruptly vanished, and I stopped and looked down into the hole and saw chaos. It looked like the village was underground. Each house was made out of bricks, though some of the small homes were on fire. Men ranging from 6 to 8 feet tall were standing in front of their homes, holding spears, maces, and pots filled with water. An honest-to-goodness fire brigade was happening in front of my eyes. Each home was being doused with water, some of the flames sputtering out. There had to be 500 men milling around, and 20 houses were ablaze. I searched for the Draugul and shuddered when I heard a roar. A monster suddenly flew over the hole, its mouth opened wide, flames dancing in its maw. Oh crap! I'd never seen something so hideous in my life. The dragon was 20 feet long, with a snake-like torso. It had gray wings attached to its back and pointy scales on its underbelly. The dragon had a reptilian head with 4 red eyes, a bulbous nose, and a mouth filled with sharp teeth. How was I going to fight a creature that could fly and breathe fire? Jade, don't delude yourself. The point is for you to fail. Shala is willing for an entire village to be destroyed by a fire-breathing monster to punish you. Sharp rage filled my insides, and it was like I was seeing red. I let out a wild shout and pointed at the creature. A bright light filled the air, and its roaring stopped. How dare this monster spread deadly fire on these innocent people? It had to pay. It was going to pay. It needed to pay. It needed... A hand shook my shoulder, and I blinked, fatigue immediately crashing into me. My eyes threatened to close, but I forced them open. If the creature was coming for me, I needed to concentrate on its every move. It took some furious blinking, but I stared at the remains of the creature and sighed. At least I didn't have to kill the thing. It looked like the villagers fared well on their own. Good. All I needed to do was seek shelter from the people, then find my way back home. Preferably, that would be Earth, but who knew how to get back there?
It's dead, Jade,
Prince Zamire insisted. Lord Larshak? I hoarsely asked. Don't call me that, he snapped. I blinked and turned to face him. He was dressed in a fur cape, fur-covered leggings, and thick boots. What in the world was he doing in Ishmar? I thought that Shala wanted him to suffer for daring to cheat on her. Princess Shala let you come here. I thought you were her sperm donor, I said, without thinking. He sent a scowl in my direction. I'm beginning to think that you're the kind of person who isn't cautious with her words, he rebuked. In my world, women aren't treated like lesser beings. We can actually speak our minds, I shot back, my legs threatening to send me tumbling to the snow. What are you going to do about the other dragon? You can barely stand. I bet you can't use your power on it, he said. My power? I charm things. I didn't do that, I argued, relieved and annoyed that the prince was with me. Jade, when I showed up, you were glowing as brightly as the Nerethian sun. You sent light into the creature and destroyed it, he explained. I felt uneasy, not liking that I had destroyed a creature with a thought. Yes, my power was a great resource, But where did it come from? I don't think my Hydral crystal was removed, I said. Shala lied to me. Zamire winced. I saw your bloody crystal. She made me watch the entire procedure. It was obvious that the prince hadn't enjoyed the visual. Was he squeamish? Whatever. I just want to know how I'm getting out of here, I said, gesturing at the area. I squeaked in surprise when a man suddenly appeared in front of us. He was tall, thin, with cropped golden hair. He smiled in my direction. You got on Princess Shala's bad side. I can tell by the robe, he said. Yes, I rasped out. And I'm guessing this man is the reason why the princess quarrels with you? Yes, I replied. Yes, Jade. Just answer all of the stranger's questions, Zamire said. Stop being an ass, Zamire, I said, losing patience with the prince. This stranger was my only hope of figuring out how I was going to get off this forsaken planet. The man smiled in my direction. You speak English? He asked hopefully. His words made me realize that I had reverted to English to insult Zamire. Sorry, I said in Janton. Don't be. I moved here 3 years ago from California. My wife doesn't speak English, so I usually have no reason to speak it, he explained in English. I'm Luke, by the way. What's your name? Jade, I said. Jade. You might want to recharge before the next Draugul comes, Luke said, a sad expression on his face. The next Draugul? How do you know that more are coming? I asked. They will keep on coming until you die, Luke said, sympathy in his ocean blue eyes. What? I squeaked. This is how Shala punishes people. She'll lure a Draugul to a village that she doesn't favor and send a poor soul to kill it. If whoever she sends manages to kill one, she'll send more. It will take some time before she realizes that the Draugul is dead. What did your village do to run afoul of Shala? I asked. Luke scowled. The Kigor spaceport was destroyed. She seems to think that a Najorian did it. Najorian? That sounds familiar, I said, trying to figure out where I heard the word from. There are Najorian on Earth. Perhaps you befriended one? He asked. There were aliens on Earth? Seriously? Then again, Lord Petrick had gone to Earth to procreate with unsuspecting humans. I see, I said. What will happen if I continue killing the Draugul that she sends? Will she get tired of sending them and forget about me? No, Luke replied. They will keep on coming until you die. Fabulous! The evil princess had placed a target on my back. These people would have no reason to keep me alive if it meant that more fire-breathing creatures would be sent their way. What in the hell was I going to do? I eyed Luke, who didn't seem dangerous, but maybe that was the point. WTF! What was I supposed to do? I glanced at Zamire, hoping that he would have an idea. I wasn't prideful enough to refuse to turn to the only help I had. He grimaced, his body going rigid. The prince let out a snarl. Then he vanished. My body broke into a cold sweat when I realized that I was weak, alone, and defenseless. What in the hell was I going to do? Chapter 14. Jade. Janton. Ishmar Village. Luke eyed me with a mixture of acceptance and guilt. Those emotions didn't bode well for me. I needed to convince this alien not to resort to murder. But how? Shortening my life would save his entire village from a fiery death. I'm sorry, Jade. You have to understand that as long as you're alive, the Draugul will keep on coming, he said, looking at the ground. So they sent you up here to kill me? I demanded, my sense of justice getting the better of me. What else do you expect me to do, Jade? Fight. If you keep giving in to Shala, She'll risk the lives of your village whenever it suits her. Think, Luke. The reason why I got sent here is because some Najorian guy you probably don't even know may have caused an explosion. Instead of bringing justice to her people, she creates a scapegoat. You know she'll only get worse, I insisted. Luke covered his face, blocking me from the battle he was having with his conscience. It was obvious that my words were starting to seep into his mind. He abruptly shook his head, and a blade suddenly flew through the air, heading straight toward me. I fell on my back to avoid my fate. This man wasn't going to kill me. I needed to figure out something.
Luke, a woman said, step aside.
Like my would-be murderer, the female appeared out of nowhere. She was tall, slender, and had ivory skin and jet-black waist-length hair.
Tia, I can't do it,
Luke said, anguish twisting his face.
I'll do it and tell the chief that you managed it. Then it won't be your turn next time,
she said, shooting her husband a soft expression. So, murdering helpless people was like an unwanted task to check off a list? I pushed myself to my feet and glared at the couple.
Listen to yourselves! You dare to treat killing me like a chore?
I shouted, my hands beginning to glow. I won't make it easy for you. I flung out my hand and a whisper of power flew at Luke, who teleported away from it. The light landed in the snow and instantly steamed it. My head began to swim as a crushing migraine came on without warning. I stopped my hands from cradling my head. I needed to focus and get away. I eyed Tia, who pulled a knife out of her boot. She teleported right in front of me and jabbed at my throat. I swiftly stepped aside, my slowness earning a shallow cut. She attempted to aim for my throat again, but I ducked and delivered a punch to her nose. She dared to look surprised, as if people sentenced to die didn't usually fight back.
Damn it! You're being selfish! If I don't kill you, more will die, Tia shouted.
If you would have stopped being cowards and fought back, no one would be dead, I said as I stepped into a hard body. Crap, I made the mistake of forgetting about Luke, the Najorian that I would have turned to my side. It was unfortunate that Tia decided to teleport to us when she did. Hands wrapped around my neck, and I just knew that it was going to be over. I would die, and this brutal practice would occur over and over again, much like the harems on Naretha. Neither problem was mine, but I couldn't stand there and watch people suffer, not if I could stand up for them.
Jade, fight!
Zamire shouted at me. Did he appear in the clearing again? I opened my eyes and eyed Tia, who was tightly gripping her knife. I saw in her brown eyes that she was going to slaughter me where I stood. Luke's hands tightened on my throat, causing my vision to blur.
Jade, damn it, fight!
There was Zamire's frustrated voice again. He acted like this was my fault. That stupid, handsome, arrogant jerk was going to pay for this. He was the one that got us into this mess. Wasn't Shala his jealous betrothed? I was sensing a trend here. One moment, I was being threatened by Anelli, who happily set me up to marry a predator, and now Shala was trying to kill me. And for what? I was going to die because a prince liked my cooking, gave me books, and a few hot kisses. I wasn't going to think about our passionate moment. Hold up. Why wasn't I dead yet? My head pounded as I blinked my tired eyes open. My senses returned to me first, bringing the horrid smell of burning flesh and screaming. Screaming? I cleared my dry throat and determined that the screaming wasn't coming from me. I glanced around and saw that the cowardly Luke was on fire. He rolled around in the snow, attempting to put the flames out. Tia shrieked and jabbed at me with the knife, but an invisible barrier stopped her movement. I reached out and touched what felt like a wall of electricity under my fingertips. Tia continued to scream as she tossed herself at the barrier, her body bouncing off at every impact. "Give up," I croaked, my legs failing on me. I plopped to the snow, my ears ringing so loudly that I could barely hear Tia's response. "You're selfish!" she cried. "You're so selfish!" She ran past me and tended to her husband, who had managed to put out the flames. I refused to feel terrible for the burns on Luke's body, since he was planning on choking me out. Okay, fine, I did feel a bit guilty. Thus far, my power reacted to my panic, desperation, anger, and rage. I knew I could enchant things at will, but the destructive light and barrier were a new thing. I was too exhausted to attempt to figure anything out, so I slipped into a peaceful sleep. I slowly opened my eyes and sat up. A brown fur blanket covered my body, which made me frown. Had my barrier failed me? I reached out and still felt the wall of magic in front of me. Aside from the blanket, there was a woven basket with warm bread, a hunk of cheese, and a hunk of succulent meat. I was relieved I was also left a glass of water. I grabbed the water first and noted the ice crystals floating in it. So, my visitor hadn't been here long ago. I took a sip and my parched throat begged me to drink it all down. My head still ached a bit, but the pain was slowly fading away. What a relief. I broke off a piece of the bread and took a cautious bite, the tasty goodness making me want to do a happy dance. It hurt to restrain myself, but I ate only some of the food before using my power to regulate the temperature of the basket. Now, no matter where I went, my food would stay warm. Since I was sated, I needed a plan. It was obvious that Luke wasn't moved to work with me. Everyone in Ishmar village were probably fearing the appearance of another Draugul. On the other hand, I needed to find a way back to Zamire, who would surely be able to commandeer a ship. Then we could escape back to Neretha. But how was I possibly going to do something like that? I was in the middle of nowhere trying to run from villagers that found it beneficial to kill me. Either way, I needed to move. Sighing, I stood and folded the blanket into thirds so I could toss it over my shoulder. Then I gulped down the rest of the glass of water and dropped it into the basket. I'd warm up some snow if I needed any drinking water. I eyed the barrier that closed me in, knowing instinctively that it needed to go. I touched it and pictured it vanishing. Thankfully, my power obeyed and I was able to suck in a relieved breath. I was slightly disappointed that the sun was high in the sky, which meant that I chanced running into a member of this forsaken village. I needed to move quickly if I was to accomplish my goal. I started walking, the snow feeling warm under my feet. It was the trick of my magic, I knew it, which was confusing and amazing all at once. It seemed that removing my Hindral crystal only made me stronger, which was quite the conundrum. What would happen once my greedy sperm donor realized that I had innate magic? Would he demand to have me back? Or was I destined to marry Gabar, the disgusting man who won me in a fixed tournament? Part of me knew that I'd have to kill him if it came down to it. He would never touch me again. "Oh, crap," I whispered to myself hours later. I had unfortunately reached another one of the stupid gorges. There was no one in sight, though I did hear the sounds of a lively celebration. Drums, horns, singing, and stomping reached my ears. It was nearing sundown, and I had only allowed myself to take 2 breaks during my long, lonely trek through a frozen tundra. The basket was nearly empty, which made me nervous, but at least I could steal from the village if I grew desperate enough to. That's what I would have to do, I realized. I would have to get the lay of the land and steal something. If I had any chance, it would need to be while everyone was sleeping. Deciding that I would rest and nibble on the remains of my food, I created a barrier around me and settled down. I ate the bread and sipped the warmed water. My eyelids grew heavy. I furiously blinked, begging my body to stay awake. But it didn't want to obey, and I fell asleep.
Chapter 15. Gwen. Neretha. The Lab.
Naretha's moon was in the sky by the time our group stood on the lawn of our prison. Lex floated beside Yvette, who was clutching his hand. Anna stood near me, her hands gripping her black dress. If only David could see his mother's fate. I wondered if Lord Pe'Urk would distract David so he wouldn't notice that his mother wasn't living at the Pe'Urk estate.
I have rules,
the prince said, his back leaning against the windowless steel front door.
Lex, if you say another word, I'll take your consciousness from you again.
Fine, Lex huffed. He knew when he was beaten.
Be kind and courteous to everyone you meet. Don't harm my lab assistants. And if you're permitted to attend meals, attend them on time.
His rules baffled me. I thought he'd say something like, "Don't escape or you will be terminated." Why was he bothered by rude individuals? It wasn't wise to question him, so I waited for direction.
Do you agree to follow my rules?
Yes, sir, Lex and I said in unison, which made the prince let out a groan.
The first thing I'll do is fix your personalities. You're lacking authenticity, he complained before the steel door vanished.
He walked through the entrance backwards, as if he didn't trust us enough to show us his back. My assumption was confirmed when I stepped into the building and found Prince Ellerin with his back pressed to the white wall. His glowing eyes closed for just a moment. When his gaze refocused, he gestured for me to stand near the wall opposite to him. I obeyed, Anna following close behind me. Maybe she thought I could protect her from the prince. That was laughable, since I couldn't even negotiate my way out of this predicament.
You can help her, Gwen. Your only enemy is your belief that you're powerless,
Christian mentally told me, the warmth returning to my mind. My heart soared, enjoying his presence. I wasn't alone anymore. "Christian, where were you?" I asked.
"Being tortured, but I'm back now," he replied in a manner of someone explaining that they stopped at the pump to get gas.
He was so casual about the cruelty that was done to him. "Why does Lord Pe'Urk have you?" I asked.
"That's not what you wanted to ask me, Gwen."
Christian's disappointment made my heart sink. "What do you mean?"
"You were wondering what I did to run afoul of your father. And the truth is, it doesn't matter. He isn't the judge and punisher of our universe. Your father is power-hungry and will see everything as a slight."
Goodness, I hadn't asked Christian the question, so why was he upset? "Gwen, we need to start moving," Anna gently told me, her hand on my arm. I blinked and focused on what was going on around me. Despite some of the negative things Christian had to say, it was still easy to get lost in him. I saw a blue light hovering in front of me. "We have to follow the light." I sighed and began walking, the light moving once I did. I looked around the long hallway for Lex and Yvette, but they were gone. It was just Anna and me, and part of me wanted to turn back around and bolt out the door. But it couldn't have been that easy. I was positive that we were being tested. It's what my father would have done. Despite the evil prince's insistence that he was nothing like my father, he was cut from the same cloth. I forced my tired legs to follow the light down the long hallway. We turned down another identical hallway and grew nervous when I realized that there wasn't a door in sight. A pine scent lingered in the air. The vents were blowing frigid air to counteract Naretha's brutal heat, but it felt excessive. I shivered after we turned down the third hallway. Where in the hell were the doors?
"Just like the Pe'Urk's triumph,"
Christian mentally told me. My hand itched to test his theory, but I refrained. The last thing I wanted to do was set off alarms.
"Agreed. It's dangerous to read the prince's mind, but his experiments are fair game. My Gwen, there is nothing I can do to protect you from what you're about to see."
My mental passenger's sorrow-filled voice made me stiffen. We were about to turn into another hallway, probably one filled with atrocities. I shuddered, dread mingling with fear. I didn't want to expose myself to something so wicked, but I had no choice in the matter. Lord Peric forced me into this dark, cold world, and I needed to stay alive so I could save Christian and my mother. I took a deep breath, and we followed the floating ball into the next hallway. "No!" Anna cried out. I blinked several times, trying to understand what I was seeing. There was a wide room that held rows of clear tanks that reached the ceiling. There were various species of people and animals in each tank. I stared into the one closest to me and saw nothing more than a head sitting there with no body. "Is everyone dead?" Anna whispered, her eyes wide with fear. I eyed another tank that held the charred remains of another being. The third tank held a pile of limbs. "I think so," I rasped out, sweat beginning to coat my skin. All I wanted to do was run out of the building and never spare this horror another thought. But I didn't have that luxury. Anna shook her head as tears streamed down her beautiful face. I was numb, unable to get in touch with my emotions. Anna's slender frame shook with her loud sobs. Part of me wanted to tell her to shut up in case Prince Ellerin saw crying as a weakness. "This is what happens to specimens that aren't viable," the prince said, his voice reaching us from a loudspeaker. "I don't waste any part of my subjects." Were the people that tried to escape the ones that were harvested for parts? "Yes," Christian replied, answering my silent question. "You can't escape him just yet." "No kidding." "Do you promise to behave?" the prince asked. It was downright creepy, being unable to see the prince, but having his voice surrounding us. Yes, Anna and I replied, my voice flat, hers shaky. "Follow the guide," Prince Ellerin demanded. We followed the ball of light out of the horrid room and turned down another hallway. The wall to the left abruptly vanished, exposing a room filled with a long row of bunk beds. Anna and I followed the ball into the room and stopped halfway down the row. The guide paused midway down the row and blinked out. There were 2 sets of clothes on the top and bottom bunk. Anna shuddered as footsteps approached. Lex and his mother stood there, both of them filled with anger. "That monster sold us to a mad scientist," Yvette hissed. "Be quiet. He can probably hear us. Remember what he said about being kind?" I reminded the mother and son pair, not wanting to see them dead. "Of course you would drink the Kool-Aid, Gwen. You were like this in Dad's harem, too," Lex snapped. I wanted to punch my brother in the face, but then I heard an electrical sound. "What's that?" Anna asked, her hand clutching mine. Moments later, a mechanical arm popped up beside Lex, clutching a needle. Before I could even shout, the needle plunged into my brother's neck. Lex was lifted into the air and was dropped onto the bed across from the one Anna and I were assigned to. Yvette let out a sigh. "Things never change," she muttered. "So much for kindness." "He could have given Lex a light punishment," I reminded his mother. She nodded. "We should probably get dressed," Anna suggested, her shaky hand snatching one of the Johnny gowns that were on the bed. "Great," I said. "Christian, are you awake?" I mentally thought at him an hour later. I was lying on the top bunk, listening to Anna and Yvette's soft weeping. Lex was across from me, his body as stiff as a board. It wasn't clear if he woke up, nor did it matter. He wasn't going to be good company in this cold, sterile room. "I am. Can't sleep?" "Despite everything, I can't. Do you have a clue of what's going to happen to me?" "From what I gather, Prince Ellerin loves testing different races. If you behave, he'll make modifications to you. If you disappoint him, he'll break you down for parts." I swallowed. I want neither to happen to me, Christian. I just want to go to Jantan to find my mother and... I trailed off, not knowing where we would go after that. "Tell me about your mother." I love and hate her at the same time. I love her for being loving, obedient, and able to make good out of any situation. But I hate her for being with my father. I hate her for dragging Max Garcia into this mess. I hate her for being so gullible. I hate her for allowing me to hope that Max, my mother, and me could be one happy family.
My mother is out there somewhere, thinking that I'm dead,
Christian replied. What planet is she on?
Earth. At least she's safe for now.
Earth? That's where I'm from. Do you think my mother and I could be safe there?
Safe? I don't know about that. But anywhere is better than where I am.
Where are you, Christian? I pleaded.
I hope you never find out, my Gwen. Get some sleep.
Before I could protest, I was out like a light.
Chapter 16. Lena. Stuck in a vision. King Rayon sat in his office, glaring at his computer screen. There was nothing special about the room. It was painted off-white and was furnished with an overflowing bookcase, wine cabinet, and an oak desk and chair. There was an ensuite bathroom and a closet where the king kept changes of clothes.
"Come in. I can sense you there, Nicole,"
the king said. Moments later, the queen entered the room with a terrified teenager following behind her. The teenager was tall, thin, with scars covering her arms. Her thin, blonde hair was up in a ponytail, and her eyes were wide with horror. "Hi, King Rayon.
Charity, what in the hell are you doing here? I have work to do,"
King Rayon snapped. Do you have a lead on the people who killed my aunt and uncle? My parents would have come to ask you themselves, but you remember what happened last time?"
The king scowled.
"I have no idea who killed your aunt and uncle. Investigations take time, Miss Bain."
"Are you looking?" Charity asked.
"Of course I'm looking. I don't have to share any of this with you. Get out of my office!" the king roared.
"No!" Charity yelled back. "I won't get out of your office. My foster cousin was kidnapped by the same aliens that killed my aunt and uncle. I deserve to know what happened." "Charity, yelling at the king will not help your case. He isn't looking for my aunt and uncle's killers. He isn't looking for Jade. Everyone knows he's so afraid of Prince Dayon that he doesn't do anything. He didn't even rescue me when I was held by that madman. Some good Samaritan had to save me," Charity yelled. King Rayon looked like he was about to behead Charity on the spot, but the courageous woman was literally saved by the bell. What sounded like a school bell rang from the speakers of the flat-screen TV. Nicole gripped Charity's upper arm and attempted to pull her from the room, but Charity held firm. It was obvious that she wasn't going anywhere.
"Speak!"
the king shouted. Moments later, the screen filled with a face that I didn't expect to see. Mira, the Najorian warrior that was traveling with Jade's best friend, Sheena. "My king, I have a report," Mira said. "We're floating above Neretha. We need anti-Blicktar serum in order to enter. Will you give it to us?"
"Depends. What are your plans?"
King Rayon asked. "To snatch Jade, Lex, and Lord Pe'Urk and get the hell off the planet. Lord Pe'Urk was the one who ordered the murders of Jane and Tim Bain."
"Perfect,"
the king said. Mira fell out of view, revealing Gwen's mother, Rose.
"King Rayon, Mira is lying to you.
She knows that you plan on sending Angelo and Winston to Janton to appease Emperor Tulda. We have an oracle on board. Once they return to Earth, Amber plans on freeing Angelo and Winston's parents, and they will all make a run for it, leaving your people in danger," Rose shouted.
"Rose, you say an oracle is on board?"
King Rayon asked with interest. "Yes."
"I have yet to speak to Emperor Tulda. We'll have to see if this oracle is correct. Mira, I will make contact with you to give you orders if I find that Rose is being truthful. You better hope she's wrong, because if Rose is correct, you'll be punished for hiding this oracle from me, King Rayon said before snapping his fingers. The screen went black. Charity, I'm glad you can see that I'm not lazy after all, King Rayon bragged.
Charity crossed her arms. You could have told me that you sent someone after my aunt and uncle's killers.
Why? So your parents can fly into space and kill your aunt and uncle's murderers? I can't have that. They wouldn't leave a witness behind. Then, what would I tell my good friend, King Relics?
You should tell King Relics to hand them over, Charity insisted.
Nicole, take Charity to her aunt and uncle's old suite. Make sure that she doesn't leave.
This time, Charity allowed Nicole to pull her from the room. King Rayon rubbed his face and picked up the phone. His words were lost to me because I was pulled into another vision. Prince Zamire sat on an exam table, dressed in a long, white robe. He looked exhausted. Princess Shala entered the room, an impatient expression on her face. She leaned up against the wall and played with the belt of her silk robe. Our genetic material isn't compatible with my womb. I may have to kidnap your father after all, she grumbled. Emperor Tulda entered the room, dressed in a fur cape and furry leggings, with the aviators on his face.
The prince is the only chance you've got, Shala. If you can't conceive an heir, then you'll have to serve another purpose, the emperor declared.
The princess paled. Tulda, the treaty says that without a Nerethian heir, we can't annex Neretha.
Emperor Tulda was such a fool for agreeing to that clause. How do we know that king didn't poison his son to ensure that he's infertile? King Relics does have a harem, does he not? I wouldn't put it past him to poison his son to ensure that he doesn't procreate with you, Emperor Tulda guessed.
Princess Shala rubbed her face. Tulda, must you speak in third person? It's giving me a headache, Princess Shala complained.
You must not order me around, Shala. Remember, you are only a princess. Goodbye, princess, Prince Zamire said before bolting through the exam doors.
Shala moved to follow him, but the emperor shoved her against the wall. She winced upon impact.
Let the specimen go. Observe his power. He obviously won't be the father of your children. I'll ask the physicians to run tests to confirm my theory, but I'm positive I'm right. King Relics fooled us all.
What's wrong with you, Tulda?
Nothing. I just possess a brilliance I didn't have before, the emperor said.
Then I was shoved into another vision. I was looking at myself. I was in the infirmary, lying on a cot, an IV attached to my arm. Amy and Molly sat on either side of my bed, both of them appearing exhausted. Molly stifled a yawn. I can't believe she's been out for so long. Do you think she'll wake up? If you trust Leah's theory, the crystal was suppressing Lena's natural abilities. We'll just have to wait until it's fully dissolved to see if she's able to wake up. I studied the bandage wrapped around my left wrist and wondered where the injury came from. This is crap. We got out of one trap only to be placed in another. Lena's the only one that has the codes out of here. I'm sure Charles can crack the code, Amy said, obviously trying to be optimistic. Then what? We can't exactly run back to Daddy Dearest. He'll punish us, then sell us again. Amy nodded. Sometimes I wish I was bought by someone. At least I wouldn't be under Lord Peric's rule anymore. Yeah. You'll only be trapped under someone else's rule. Think about it, Amy. At least that piece of crap ignored us. Your husband won't. Amy shuddered. I guess you're right. David materialized through the wall, carrying a limp Anastasia. She was wearing a dirty gown, her dark hair matted with blood.
Father is reclaiming his gifted children. I'm going back for Jade,
David reported. He dropped Anastasia onto one of the cots and ran through the wall. Let me get Leah, Amy said before running out of the room. Molly sighed. Lena, I know you're in there. Please wake up. This is a crap show. Who knows what Lord Petrick is up to? We need you to help us fight. I desperately wanted to return to my body so I could tell David that Jade wasn't in the Rima estate, but I couldn't so much as move from my spot against the wall. I wanted to warn Amy that Anastasia was a liability, but my lips wouldn't move. I was bouncing from vision to vision, unable to return to my own present. It was a nightmare that I was desperate to wake up from. But I felt a pulling sensation, and I was dropped into another vision,